Speak to former 22 SAS Mick QCB. The QCB is the Queen's Commendation for Brave Conduct. Born into a military family, Mick attended 14 schools over his childhood. His dream of being a professional footballer came to an end after an unsuccessful trial with Lincoln City, and he visited the careers office aged 16 to join the 1975 Junior Paris course. An ankle injury left him unable to perform any jumps, and Mick briefly left the Army before rejoining 29 Commando. Passing SAS selection on the second attempt, Mick went on to serve 14 years in B Squadron and received his QCB for efforts in Northern Ireland. Mick was deployed to the UAE for the First Gulf War and then posted to Bosnia, where he was taken prisoner. After leaving the regiment, Mick moved into corporate security, where he would carve out a 22-year career in locations like Kazakhstan and Nigeria. Mick and his daughter now run Hawks & Co. and deliver security training for a number of sectors, including agriculture and rural crime prevention.
Mick, how are you today, man?
Yeah, all good, and much appreciated, and nice to be talking to the States. This is my second podcast.
Yeah.
The first one was actually to Iowa farmers, of all things, because I did an article about rural farm stuff. An Iowa farm organization obviously read it, did the connection with the military, and we had a good hour and a half chat about it, which was really enjoyable.
Yeah, we're going to get into that because that's an important thing to think about. I mean, we think it's so much about other aspects, which is sex trafficking or vice, but this is or homicide, but this is fascinating, which is farmers and they're getting equipment ripped off or cattle or what it may be. So we can definitely talk about that. But there is such a fascination with the UK, and there's a greater fascination with the UK military. And so let's talk about you, Mick. How did you get into your career? Tell me about your childhood. Tell me about getting started. What was that like for you? Did you grow up in a rural town? Did you grow up in someone very urban, or where?
No, bizarrely, my father was in the military. He bit of a derogative name. He was a crapper, mostly. So wore a BlackBerry, Royal Signals, of all things. So I travelled all around the UK and Germany, specifically, me and my brother. And all I ever wanted to do was be a professional footballer, because I used to be quite good at football, soccer, as you call it.
Mm-hmm.
And so every school I went to, I played for. So that's all I ever wanted to do. And even when it came to cross country runs, I had a ball under my arm and ignore the cross country run and go off. And quite bizarrely, when I was 15, my mother and father divorced.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Germany at the time. So we then came back to, I stayed with my mum. We came back to the UK. I had 1 year left of school before I was 16. The head teacher got me as trial with a little small football team, Lincoln City, over on the East Coast. I went down there expecting to be picked, to be told that I wasn't good enough, which was a bit of a kick in the crutch, to be quite frank, when you're that age. Yeah, so it was a choice really then of, right, what am I going to do? And in Lincolnshire, rural Lincolnshire at the time, you're either a farmer, a mechanic, a builder, or you join the Royal Air Force, because there was a lot of RAF bases all over Lincolnshire, and I certainly didn't want to do that. So I then sort of made my way. So at the age of 15 and a half, I made my way down to the Army Recruiting Centre in a place called Grimsby, and signed up immediately for the Parachute Regiment, because at that time, so 1975, they had a junior, call it the Junior Parachute Regiment. So I signed up basically. At the time, I was too light, because I was like that, little skinny thing. So that I was told to drink a pint of Guinness every night. Bear in mind, 15 and 3/4, I've never drunk alcohol in my life. So, forcing this horrible black stuff down my throat. got to the day of the weigh-in, and I was still 2 pound underweight. But the big burly paratrooper who signed me up sort of put a foot on the back of the scales, got me over the limit. And at 16, off I went down to Aldershot to join the junior parachute regiment. And quite bizarrely, I actually found out I was a natural runner, because they did a 10-mile run. I think within the first week we were down there. Just an intro, really. Intro to these young 16-year-olds, a quick 10-mile run. And I came second. And I wish now that I'd actually done more of it when I was at school, if that makes sense. So excelled at running. But unfortunately, at the time with junior paras, what you do is you wait until you're 17. So you do a year really of sort of mini soldiering, marching out, learning how to march, all the normal sort of rubbish. And then at 17 or 17 and a bit, you then go off and do recruit company. So at the end of that, obviously, you then go off and join one of the battalions. And because you've done a year as a junior, you started at week 5, basically. So it was a 22-week course. You start at week 5, and it really, because you can march and all that sort of stuff already. P company, which is quite a physical test, really, for the parachute regiment, is at week 12. I managed to get myself through that. And then week 15, we were due to go and do a thing called Advanced Wales. So it's down to Sennybridge in mid Wales to do a 3-week tactical exercises and stuff like that, really. And but just before we went there, we decided that the instructors took us for a little run. And while we were out for a run, they asked us to jump off a tank burn, which was about 8 foot high. I jumped off and snapped my ankle quite badly. So it basically quite annoying for all the other lads because they had to carry me back because we didn't have it was in the old days when you didn't have ambulances following you around, just got up there So I had it manipulated in place at the hospital. And then 2 weeks later, they re-x-rayed it, found out that it was not it hadn't knitted properly. So they pinned it. 6 months later, after the rehabilitation phase, I got told that I couldn't parachute, which was a bit of an overzealous military doctor officer. And as we go through the story, the common denominator are medical doctors that seem to just get in my way all the time. So the choices were really join a normal infantry unit or leave the army. And because you're indoctrinated, really, you're a parachute regiment or nothing. I left the military for about 2 months. Realised it was a big mistake, getting out. So I rejoined. The recruiting sergeant said, "Listen, you got a really good report from the parachute regiment. Why don't you? But you've got this big stamp on your medical docs, saying that you're not allowed to parachute. So how about being a commando? Because obviously commandos don't have to parachute, or most of them don't anyway. So off I did, and I joined the Army Commando. So not the Royal Marines, but Army Commando. So you're actually attached to the Royal Marines, and I decided to join the Royal Artillery, 2-9 Commando, basically, which is great. So went down there, joined the artillery, got myself through basic training. Because of the parachute regiment stuff, I got best shot, best gym, and best recruit, which I wasn't happy about, really, because I thought it was a bit of a cheat, because I'd done a bit with the parachute regiment. So yeah, it was a bit but they said, "Listen, you've earned it, so suck it up and get get hold of it." So did that, and then went off and joined 2-9 Commando, basically, which were predominantly based in Plymouth, which is south of England. Did the commando course. Found the commando course quite easy, to be quite frank, and the reason being is doing P company of the parachute regiment when you're how old was I? 17, just over 17. And now you're talking, maybe a year later, your body changes. You get a bit more mature. You sort of fill out a wee bit, get man muscles. So I actually found the commander course a lot easier than P Company. So I managed to get myself through that, which is fine. I then got posted up to Scotland, Arbroath, and we were attached to 4-5 Commando. That was there's 3 Commando basically. There's 4-5 Commando, 4-2 Commando, and 40 Commando. However, there used to be an organisation called 4-1 Commando, and they were on their very last tour of Northern Ireland, which is why I wanted to go to Sem Battery, because the battery was going to be attached to go to Northern Ireland with 4-1 Commando. So I did a Northern Ireland tour, which was 4.5 months. Very quiet. South Armagh, very quiet. No issues. No incidents occurred. Came back, but that got me thinking really that I actually quite enjoyed the excitement of being in Northern Ireland, because in them days Northern Ireland was quite a tasty place to go, if that makes sense, and everything that sort of goes wrong with Northern Ireland. So that was always in the back of mind. So I did this tour. Then 1982, the Falklands came about, and now being in the artillery, I have never been on the guns in my life. So you've obviously got the 6 guns. I've never been a gunner. I've always been at the other end, with the binoculars and directing the gunfire, which is a much better job. So when we went down to the Falklands, I was attached to Yankee Company, in the FOO party, forward observation team, and we had a great tour. Now, going back to my pin in my ankle, so we actually when we got ashore in the Falklands, it was peat bog, so your feet were soaking wet all the time. Now, 6 months before we went down there, I had attempted to take my pin out. Your pin is supposed to come out after 18 months, but because I'd left the army, I totally forgot about it. As kids do at that age. So I went for a run up in Scotland, and my ankle was flipping killing me. So again, medical doctor recommended that I went down and get the pin taken out. So I went down to London, just outside London, tried to get the pin out, couldn't get it out, so they just buried it deeper. But the scar hadn't really healed, and 6 months later we were in the Falklands, and with the peat bog and your feet getting soaking wet all the time. Now we did the Yomper cross, as they call it, the tab across, where with all your equipment, which is quite hard going, but again, not a major drama. And we got to a place called Mount Kent, which is the first of the major big hills before the major battles. And we were on there, and we were adjusting the artillery guns onto one of the mountains called Two Sisters, because that was our next objective. Two Sisters, we were doing that. And one of the guys said, "Mick, before we commence the attacks, which was going to be 24 hours later, so why don't you go down and just get your ankle, because the ankle was really pussy and gooey and quite a mess actually, but didn't affect me walking at all. It was just gammy. So I went down to the Royal Marine Medical Aid post. Again, an overzealous officer demanded that I go back, pick all my equipment up, and they were going to fly me off to a hospital ship called the Uganda. And I was having nothing. I basically walked all the way across, and you now want me to go a helicopter and go on a ship where there's people that have real injuries. They've had their arms shot off, or they've been shot, or whatever. And just because I've got a gammy ankle. So anyway, I just totally ignored him. And then the day before we were going to commence heading over to the start line for the battles, this officer turned up, gave me a bit of a bollocking for ignoring his order, and then demanded that I follow him basically. Thankfully, there was a major from our unit who was stood there, listened to the argument, and basically said, "Listen, if Hawksy said his ankle's okay, then his ankle's okay." Now, the thing is I'm not a big fan of people going sick in a war zone unless you've got your arm shot up, and especially when you're in a little 4-man team, because you dropping out puts a lot of pressure on the other 3 people. So for me, that was just ridiculous. Like, I was still a young lad. Okay, my ankle had gone gammy, but so what? Like, you can deal with that afterwards. So we continued. We got mortared. It's quite funny. We were on the start line, freezing cold weather down in the Falklands. The Argentinians decided to lob a few mortars our way, and it was really they didn't know we were there. They were just spontaneous sort of mortars coming in. Not a lot you can really do about it because you can't really move. so basically you just get your head down as best you can, and just hope that one of these mortars hasn't got your name on it, like. Then we got the order to move, and then the battle commenced. If that makes sense, young lad, just to the right hand side of me, got a .5 straight through his skull, took the back of his head off. Continue. It was quite, it was the old days of fixed bayonets and map and compass. It was old school battle, if that makes sense. But again, a lot of drama. Bringing in artillery rounds all over the place for the Marines. We ended up taking the mountain. As the Argentinians were retreating, we actually followed them with the artillery rounds. Quite bizarrely, we would stonk them with artillery rounds, and they would disperse. And then about 10 minutes later, they would come out of the hiding place and then go and have a look. Go and have a look at the holes where the artillery rounds had come in, and obviously pick up a few of the dead bodies. So we would just repeat, throw another couple of rounds down, like. So it was just a bizarre, following the Argentinians as they were going back. And people always said to me, do you not feel bad about, attacking Argentinians that are retreating? And my argument is, listen, they're retreating, they haven't surrendered, because our next battle thereafter was going to be a place called Sapper Hill. And Sapper Hill was just outside the capital. Very, very difficult location. It was very flat. The route up to it was open. Would have taken quite a few casualties. Fortunately, the Argentinians decided to surrender before we got that phase. So they surrendered. We spent the next sort of 3 or 4 days just getting our act together. We actually commandeered a house that the Argentinians had absolutely wrecked. So we sort of tidied it up. The family came back. We helped them sort of clean it up and stuff like that. And then I got put on the Canberra, which was a civilian vessel, to come back. And unfortunately, because of the state of my ankle by then, I ended up in the hospital wing for the whole duration of the sail back, much to the despair of everybody else drinking alcohol and having a good old sort of ginganguli all the way back, like, but absolutely no regrets whatsoever. So got back to the UK, and it was during the Falklands really that I started having thoughts about going to Special Forces, predominantly the SAS, if that makes sense. And it was 1986 really that I decided to take the plunge. Now 1986, the SAS run 2 courses a year, one in the January, one in August, winter summer course. And because we used to go to Norway every year, doing the winter course was the obvious one for me. So I went and did that. Now, unfortunately, 1986 was the worst weather on record, to such an extent that because the first 4 weeks, as it was then, is just running up and down mountains with a heavy burden on, a bit like your Delta Force. In fact, your Delta Force copied the SAS basically. So all it was, now that's actually quite, the simple part of it. It's just, get a heavy burger on and go from A to B and just get on with it, if that makes sense. But the test week, they cancelled, or they postponed test week. So the final week of the 4 weeks is actually a thing called test week. And the aim of the game really is to get to the start of test week with no injuries, because then you give yourself a really good chance of getting through the next 6 days, where the distance gets longer, your burgers get much heavier, and it just weighs you down, I suppose. So getting to the start of that with no injuries is the aim of the game, really. So first route, yeah, fine. Bear in mind that when you jumped out off a truck, the snow was up to your crutch. So that and a heavy burden was quite hard going. Second route, so first route, not a problem. Second route, unfortunately, I was the first one to be called off the truck, which meant you were trailblazing for everybody else. And off I set, and I just remember getting to about the 5th checkpoint. So about 20 odd kilometers into this route. The chief instructor of the SAS and training major were having a cup of coffee, as you sort of trudge into the checkpoint. And they basically, what they said was, Hawksy, step off, let one of the other guys sort of overtake you, and then rejoin it. Now, being a keen as mustard individual, totally ignored that good advice.
Yeah.
And as you do, and then my last recognition really was going up to the final checkpoint, because thereafter I woke up in a helicopter, and it was a really bizarre feeling. And it wasn't until I was actually in the medical centre back in Hereford that the directing staff who was at the checkpoint came down and had a chat with me just to make sure I was okay. And he said, yeah, mate, what happened was you came up to the checkpoint, and bear in mind, this is the last checkpoint, and then the rest of the route was all downhill, down to where the vehicles were. So home and dry, really.
Nice.
But all I remember is going up to the checkpoint, and then it's, then in the helicopter. But what the DS said was, yeah, Mick, you came up, you took your burger off, you got your map out. He told me which way to go, put my map away, picked his burger up, and ran in ran in the opposite direction. So I'm supposed to be going that way, and I ran that. So they rugby tackled me, and obviously knew something was amiss, and then brought the helicopter in. But the abject failure of coming off selection was I was distraught, because obviously you can't carry on, because again a medical doctor determined that he said, listen, you've had quite a bad blowout there. With hypothermia and exhaustion and everything else that all came together. So they said, listen, we're going to recommend that you come off. And I was distraught, if that makes sense. And
it does.
On average, there's about 180 people start SAS selection. And in that first 4 weeks, at the end of that, you're probably down to about 40 people. So, gutted, absolutely distraught. So, ended up going back to Arbroath in Scotland. Had every intention of going straight back on the August course. But I then met a female lady called Kim, who I ended up marrying. So my priorities slightly changed somewhat. Bear in mind that, I was quite rough and ready, to be quite frank. I was never interested in a relationship with women, but bizarrely, when you meet the right woman,
and
for me it was, selection's always going to be there. Meeting the right woman is never going to be there, if that makes sense. So I then decided to start this relationship with this wonderful lady. Really, ended up marrying her. And we have 4 fantastic kids, which is brilliant. So the right choice, if that makes sense.
It does.
So a couple of years later, so 2 years later, I was put on the All Arms Commando course as an instructor, helping the young lads sort of get ready to go down to do the commando course. And while I was down there, really, my wife Kim said, "Listen, why don't you get yourself back on selection?" And I've been in Plymouth as well. Bizarrely, Plymouth is actually quite a hilly city, so it's perfect for getting yourself ready for going back on the mountains, really, on SAS selection. So I went back on selection. Was very, very lucky. No injuries. Managed to sort of get through that initial thing of the selection process quite. Wouldn't say easy, but I was lucky enough that I peaked just at the right time. So during that week, basically, some people peak before it and then suffer really badly. The way my training sort of went through, I peaked at just at the right time. So we were flying really, and we managed to get through. About 35 of us got through, ready for the jungle. And unfortunately, the jungle is by far the hardest part of selection. You no doubt you've probably been told, but with the jungle, it's 6 weeks over in Brunei. The good thing about Brunei, it's a very clean jungle. So if you cut yourself, you can self-administer it and then just crack on. If you was in South America, for instance, Belize, and you cut yourself, that's you casually backed out because it's a dirty jungle. So it was great, but unfortunately we had a fatality in the jungle, and what it was a young sergeant, not on selection, but he'd volunteered to come out with us to act as enemy.
Mhm.
And we did a camp attack really. The morning before went really well. The other section went through, or the other sort of troop went through the camp attack in the afternoon. And when you hear blanks going off and then suddenly there's a live round, everyone sort of looked at each other. Flipping, there was a live round just gone off there. And unfortunately, one of the lads had a live round mixed in with his blanks. And he had a BFA, a blank firing attachment, at the end of the weapon, and a tiny, so the round actually hit the back of the BFA, but a tiny slither of the round had peeled off and gone down the side, really, and straight through this guy's heart, because he was stood about 5 feet away, and he basically was dead before he even hit the floor, and that was just a slither of his bit of metal, so it was just a bit of a culture shock, really. You're on SAS selection, and then suddenly you're having to dig out a body bag and carry an individual off the training area, But the training didn't stop. The SIB came in the following morning, so the MP, military police, all turned up. You can imagine the jungle, how minging it is, dirty and that lot. They all turned up in suits, which was quite amusing, to interview the other lot that were part of the camp attack itself. They all had to hand in their weapons because no one actually knew who actually fired the weapon. Because it was a camp attack, shots fired and then just cracked on. They actually thought when he was playing the part, but it actually been shot dead. Wow. So no one actually knew who actually pulled the trigger. So all the weapons had to be then shipped out, and for the exercise to continue, they just got told to go and chop a big lump of wood and carry a bit of wood around with them for the next 24 hours until they managed to get all the weapons back into the jungle. So it was just business as normal, typical SAS, fatality, doesn't stop the training, just it's one of them things, you just got to crack on with it. So that was a bit of a culture shock, but there you go. Managed to finish the exercise, and as we were getting helicoptered back into the camp at the end, at the finish of it, the military police were waiting there, and when one of the lads got off the helicopter, they said, "Listen, it was your weapon." So they dragged him away. Had to do a load of briefings and all that sort of stuff. flew back basically to Hereford. We were then down to 15 people. We then went on combat survival, where you go on the run for 7 days, 6 days, something like that. Being pursued by the parachute regiment, who are very keen to capture you. We had 4 people fail combat survival, which is really bizarre, because it's right at the end of selection. So bear in mind, selection is a 6-month process. So getting to that point, everybody normally you would assume would pass, but we had 4 failures. One decided to spill his guts in the interrogation, and just waffled his whatever. So he failed. We had another guy who hyperventilated in his mask. He failed. Another guy didn't enjoy stress positions, so he went. And quite bizarrely, there was a really good lad, a parachute regiment lad, who actually got captured by his own troops, parachute regiment. But he'd psychologically he'd just stressed himself out and thought that because he'd been captured, that would be a big black mark against him, and he was going to fail. But he was actually on a par to pass the course.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And to be honest, everybody gets captured at some point anyway. It's just the way they gear the exercise. Certainly at the final checkpoint, everybody's going to get captured because you've got to go through the system of the interrogation, So the interrogation phase, really 36 hours getting interrogated. You went through 10 different interrogators. The army at the time, they ran an equivalent course. So when we went on the run, we were actually on the run with some of these army people that you've never met before. We had 4 Malayan special forces guys with us. So we managed to outrun them and get rid of them pretty sharpish, because you obviously didn't want people hanging around with you. But they do 12 hours in the bag. SAS guys do the full 36. Came out of that, like I say, 4 people failed it. So we were then down to 12 people. And then that 12 people passed the course mostly. So long process, but thoroughly enjoyable. Now, bearing in mind that Kim was back in Plymouth, and my eldest son was 4 days old when I went on selection. So the next time I saw him, he was 6 months old. And people, the reason I mention that is when you go on things like SAS selection, same as your lads when they go off and do Delta and the SEAL sort of training, you've got to be 100% dedicated to what you're going to do, basically, and don't worry about family stuff, and put the family side of it to the background. So when I was in the jungle, there was a guy came up to me and tried to engage in conversation about my son, and I literally just dished him off. I said, "Listen, not interested," because if you start having, you know what it's like in the jungle. As soon as you start having second thoughts in the jungle, you know what I mean. It's not an environment really where you want to be thinking anything other than getting on with the job in hand. Because some of the stuff you do in the jungle is actually quite dodgy, especially the rangers, stuff like that. It's quite you've got to be 100% focused on what you're doing. So I dished him off really, and the following day he canned it. He decided to jack his hand in, and the reason being is he also had a young kid, 2 years old, I think, and he just wanted someone to talk, family, and to be honest, I wasn't interested. I don't know if it was a cry for help or whatever, but in a way, I'm glad I didn't engage in that conversation, because again, if you start having second doubts about what you're doing, it has a massive psychological effect, and so I dished him off really. Do I feel bad? Not really, because I managed to pass selection, if that makes sense, and we did that. So at the end of it, it was fine. There's no song and dance about passing SAS selection. You all get told to go to the cinema in the old SAS camp when it used to be the small camp that we had. You'll get sat in there. The RSM turns up with the CO, training major. All the instructors come in there, and basically they just throw you your berry because all it's about is earning your berry and your cap badge. You know, the old sandy thing that's still got it on
Nice.
the back end there. And that's all it's all about, really. And then at the end of it, they say, listen, guys, you know, because you put in what squadron you want to go to and what troop, because the troop's quite important because that's going to be your entry skill. So boat troop, air troop, mountain troop, or mobility. Because I was based up in Scotland, we used to go to Norway every year. It makes sense for me to go to mountain troop. So bizarrely, there was two of us, and bear in mind that nobody goes to mountain troop. Everyone normally goes to the other three troops, but all of a sudden, but the other guy was an RAF, Royal Air Force mountain guide, so he was destined to go to mountain troop anyway. And I managed to get the same one. They're obviously quite short of blokes anyway. There's 16 guys per troop normally, but that goes down. Some weeks or some months you could have only 8 in the troop, but a full complement of a troop is normally 16 people. So it was great. I'd finally reached that sort of peak within the military, really. Getting into the SAS or the SBS. At the time that I did SAS thing, it wasn't a joint selection. SBS still did their thing, and the SAS sort of did their thing. Now it's a joint venture as such, and because the Marines at the time, when they wanted to join the SAS, they actually had to leave the Marines, and then they were administered by the parachute regiment, came on selection, and if they failed, that was them out of a job, really. Yeah. They could try and get back in the Marines. So it was quite a big deal for the Marines at the time. So then they opened it up and said, listen, let's have a joint selection, because the SBS lads are really good lads, very underrated. And a lot of the SAS people now, they work hand in glove and work well together. But they're predominantly maritime. And never forget that. They are the maritime role. That's their main role, whereas the SAS is sort of land-based. And that's a bit like your Delta Force or Delta and your SEAL teams. It's slightly different roles, if that makes sense. First deployment for us, really. First Gulf War. Bit of a bizarre time, really. I was in B Squadron, so we were on the anti-terrorist team right up until the end of the year, and then in January we changed over in G Squadron. So now G Squadron had been in the desert for the last 6 months doing all the training, the build-up really for the Gulf War. So some bright spark, I haven't got a clue whose idea this was. So B Squadron, we were doing the anti-terrorist team for 6 months, black kit, in and out of windows, all that sort of rubbish. And then the Gulf War sort of set off, and you had 2 squadrons that were going to deploy, D Squadron and A Squadron. They were the 2 squadrons that were deploying to the Gulf. So G Squadron then came back, took over the anti-terrorist team. B Squadron, what job do we do? We haven't done any of the build-up. And really the right decision should have been G Squadron, you stay out in the jungle, out in the desert, because you've done the 6-month build-up. And unfortunately, B Squadron, you're going to have to extend another 6 months on the anti-terrorist team. Now, that really should have been quite an easy call. Yes, B Squadron would have been really pissed off because 6 months on the anti-terrorist team is actually quite boring, if that makes sense, because you're in Hereford just doing all these, and it's death by exercises and the right call should have been G Squadron. You're fully trained up, crack on. But they didn't. They said B Squadron. So me and 7 other lads got sent up to the UAE. We actually deployed with A Squadron. So A Squadron went out. We went with them. But then when we got to the airbase in the UAE, we then got pushed up to a military camp, and we were tasked really with a 6-month task, or 3 months task really, of teaching the special forces, and a lot, close protection, all that sort of type work, green, all the green stuff and all this lot. And it was really as a bit of a favour for the UAE government to just as a thank you really for using their other assets and airports and all that sort of thing. So we were under the proviso that as an 8-man patrol, when the air war started, that we were then going to get shifted up and join either A Squadron or D Squadron. That was our thought process. The day before the air war started, the CO of 22 SAS came up, visited us, and said, "Listen, guys, hate to say it, but you're not getting involved. You're actually going to be staying here because we need to be seen to be doing the UAE government military a favour. You're going to be hanging out here." So for the first Gulf War was actually watching it on CNN with the guys sort of going, and bear in mind that we had quite a few people captured. So watching that on CNN was actually quite difficult because you're teaching, UE forces here, and then Iraqis, were shooting up and killing members of the SAS. So it's quite a bit of a surreal thing, and not enjoyable, to be honest. The deployment, even though it was just a teaching role, seeing the way the first Gulf War sort of went out, and you're watching it on CNN in the officers' mess in the UAE was a bit of a kick in the crutch, I suppose. A bit like sort of not getting picked for Lincoln City. So we as soon as that had all finished, we then sort of deployed back to Hereford, and it was this sort of stage when I thought, I want to do something different. So I volunteered really to do undercover work in Northern Ireland. And there's a thing called, at the time, there was an organisation called 14 Intelligence. And what that is an undercover arm. So it's an all arms selection process, 6-month course based in Hereford, not in the SAS camp, but a different camp. And you learn all about surveillance, close target recce's, and pistol work. Fantastic. So what the SAS do is they send 4 people on every course. So all the squadrons will send 1 individual to so put 4 people on every course, basically. And the reason for that is it's a really good skill to learn. So part of your SAS thing, if you've got people that are surveillance trained as well, to a very high level, it's actually a good skill to have within the squadron. So I volunteered, and bear in mind that I've got quite long blonde hair, sort of grey now, but blonde hair. So I look like Colonel Custer, to be honest. So they're a bit concerned. So they said, "Listen, Mick's volunteered, but he does stand out a wee bit because of his hair." But this guy turned up, the Sergeant Major of the 14N, who's an SAS guy, came up, said, "Listen, Mick will be fine. He can dye his hair or whatever, so let's not worry about it." So basically went on the course, and it's a 6-month course, and it was really interesting. Obviously, a lot of the emphasis is on surveillance, foot surveillance initially, and then mobile surveillance, both rural and urban environments. The other part of the course really is close target recce, which is the bread and butter really of the SAS, breaking into houses and legally and all that sort of stuff. Taking pictures, use of infrared camera, looking for hides and all that. So fantastic skill, really enjoyed it. And then the final part really is the CQB, the pistol shooting, because all the SAS guys anyway are pretty good at pistol work. because of the anti-terrorist side of it. Whereas the Green Army, very rarely do they use a pistol. So for them, it's quite a steep learning curve, really, because their pistol work has to be as good as SAS guys, if that makes sense. And it's a really good skill to have, like, you know, being a very good shot. Because bear in mind that you are now going on operations, and this and the other. So did the course. I actually thought I'd failed the course, and the reason being is SAS people are not the best surveillance operators, because you've got a RoboCop attitude, because you're a bit more gung ho, a bit more aggressive than the normal Green Army, as we call it. So every time we had a debrief after a surveillance serial, they would bring in the guy that you'd been following. They would bring him in, and he would sort of, you know, give us his impression of what he saw. And it was quite bizarre because, you know, be there, yeah, Mick, you know, you did this, and I was, and oh yeah, and Mick, and it was all me, and I was like, hold on, am I the only one on this course? You know, looking around like, you know, what the hell? So at the end of it, I got called in, and they said, right, mate, you know, what do you think? And I said, well, to be quite frank, I actually thought I'd failed the course. I said, well, why? I said, well, you know, every time, you know, I was getting blown every time, like, you know, they say, yeah, what that's called is you were just keen. But we can deal with that, because if you're keen in Hereford, it means that you can curb it, you can slow it down when you get into operational environment. Guys that don't get stuck in a training environment are very unlikely to get stuck in when you're doing it for real, in some of the hard terrorist estates and that lot. And actually that stood me in good stead, really. Deployed to Northern Ireland, I actually went to Central Det. So we had North Belfast, Shankill Road, New Lodge, the Ardoyne, Tigers Bay. So areas really that were absolutely hated each other, because you had the Shankill Protestants and the Ardoyne, and a road in between. And these two, you know, Protestants, they absolutely detested each other with a vengeance. And a lot of people, that what they do is they try and speak with a Belfast accent, and I never did, because I thought that was a bit of a dickhead thing. Because if you're talking to a Belfast local and you try and put on a Belfast act, they're going to see straight through you, if that makes sense. So I had long blonde hair, had a big gold earring, like a flipping pirate or a drug smuggler. And I just went about as if I was a chippy, a carpenter. So I had lots of wood in my car. You know, sometimes I would get out with a carpenter belt on. If I needed to get a bit of intelligence, you know, I would take a clipboard with me, you know, knocking on doors as you do. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and we had a really successful time, really, against both Protestant and Catholics. Never forget that. You know, ultimately, with the British Army, if you're a bad person, Catholic or Protestant, you're going to get it. If it makes sense, you know, we're going to be on you. There was no, you know, we're going to go after the Catholics all the time, the IRA, because some of the UDA, some of the Protestants were bad people, doing bad things. So depending on what intelligence we were receiving, really depended on who you were going to be operating against. Unfortunately for the IRA, they were more active, so a lot of our jobs really were directed on there. I got a bravery award while I was out there, and it was really just because we stopped the IRA from putting a pipe bomb in a police barracks on one end, and the other one we stopped mortaring another army, police station that was based in the Shankill. We managed to foil both of them, so they decided to give me some award, like, you know. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a very satisfying work, if that makes sense. And people always say, do you get nervous or whatever doing undercover work against, bad terrorists? The answer is no. Reason being, you've got your get out of jail card. You've got your pistol down your pants, and that gets you out of any trouble, and also gives you a bit more bravado, and gives you that a few more kahunas, if that makes sense. And what I noticed as well is some of because obviously you've got SAS guys mixed in with, so on average, so there's 16 people roughly in a det. 2 will be SAS. The rest of them are a mixture of all sorts: paratroopers, Marines, RAF, Navy, all sorts really mashed in. And I just found that depending on the personality of the individual, some people used to be like me, used to like, getting behind the target and walking and, getting stuck into them.
Mm-hmm.
Some people actually prefer being in the car and just driving by and doing that side of it. So a bit more of a standoffish attitude, if that makes sense. And it's horses for courses, really. If that I wasn't the best in a car, and because I didn't like being sat in a car, flipping fanning about. I prefer to be on the ground, getting stuck in. So, when they would say, late at night down an alleyway, can you go and can someone have a walk down the alleyway just to see if what number gate they're putting this bomb together or whatever. I'd be straight out there because I enjoyed that side of it, whereas I didn't really enjoy doing the following in the cars because I just found it boring, to be quite frank. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So you do 18 months of that. So it's a 2-year posting, basically. 6 months of doing the course, 18 months doing surveillance. Very successful. We had a lot of successes against both Protestants and Catholics. And then really straight back. So, your hair's quite long, got it all chopped off, straight back onto the anti-terrorist team back in Hereford, and then it was really it was that sort of time when we did the build-up really for going to Bosnia, which was quite interesting. And now at the time it was UN, so the Americans weren't really involved in it. So it was very much a British and French run or sort of deployment. We got sent. So we worked as 4-man teams all over. Never ever dressed like UN. Fucking berets and helmets. Never used to wear any of that crap. Body armor, ditched it. The reason we ditched body armor was when you're dealing with the frontline troops, none of them have got body armor on. So you turning up with your body armor on, your street cred goes out the window. So we should ditch all that. The only thing that we had on us that established us as being UN was a little ID card, because it certainly wasn't badges, and SES don't wear badges and rank and any of that crap anyway. So when they issued us with all this blue stuff, that literally got binned in the camp and never used to go out with it. We just went out with our DPM and your weapon and off you went, So quite an interesting time. We were up in a place called Hatch, which is in the southwest of the country. But it's also it was a little enclave really that had managed to hold out. And it was a 5-corps run by a guy called General Dudakovich, quite a hardy little individual, Muslim general, quite hardcore. He roughly knew who we were, but we never let on. You can't really go out and say, we're in the SAS. Because we officially were Joint Commission Observers, JCOs. We were actually working with a Danish detachment, really, of the UN. Never used to go to any of their briefings. We totally ignored them. Listen, guys, we're just going to go off and do our own thing. And we were the eyes and ears, really, of the general that was down in Sarajevo, which was great for him because he had these little teams, 4-man teams all over Bosnia, being able to do what the UN couldn't do. And a little story there. we came, so there was me and a lad called Billy Billingham, who you might have heard of.
Yeah.
We drove up, so two of us in a crappy old Land Rover, turned up, and there were 6 warrior vehicles from the light infantry, British battalion, 6 warrior vehicles, and they were just stood on the sat on the side of the road. So me and Billy sort of walked over. So bearing in mind they've got their helmets on and the body, all that crap. And me and Billy walked up and said, "Listen, guys, what's the problem? Why are you sat here?" And they said, "Yeah, well, we're trying to get up a track because there was reports of Muslims having done some atrocities against Serbian military people. And what was stopping them getting up there were these 2 Muslims, quite oldish people, in deck chairs, and they had 2 oil cans, big oil drums, and a big sort of bit of wood over the top saying no entry. And that was it. And so me and Billy looked at each other, thought, what the hell? So but literally we walked over, kicked the oil cans over,
Yeah,
and threatened the two lads, they jumped up, what are you, fuck off, like, And they said, "Listen, follow us," like. And so we got in our crappy little Land Rover, and then drove up the hill. The warriors came up after us, obviously reported what they saw and everything else. But we had a chat with one of the sergeants, rather than talking to the officer. We spoke to one of the sergeants. Said, "Listen, mate, just a matter of interest. How long have you been sat there? 4 days. 4 days sat on the side of a road." Because that was the UN for you. If Muslim or Serbian or Croats said you can't go up there, you have to follow the mandate, and they couldn't go up, which we just found ridiculous. So hence we just kicked the oil cans over, the oil drums over, and just said, "Listen, follow us," like. So that was, I suppose, the good side of having SAS troops on the ground when it was part of the UN. Because we didn't follow any of the mandate at all. Anything UN didn't wear now that actually kicked us in the backside. So we organised a meeting between General Dodakovic and a senior general from the Serbian military. And what it was, it wasn't a really important meeting. It was just a meeting really to decide where the frontline troops were going to be, so that when the Daytona peace thing came in and it went from UN to NATO, they could have on the maps really, accurately where their troops were. If that makes. So it was really just to tie in that, so no big dramas, like. So the day before, me and Billy had wrecked the place, and thought, yeah, listen, we'll nip down. And it was, and basically it was in sort of no man's land. So 2Ks left, you Muslim front line, and then 2Ks right, you were on the Serbian front line. So right in the middle was where we were going to have the meeting. Serbs agreed to it, Muslims agreed to it. Yeah, we're all happy. So the day before, we went down there, wrecked it, as you do. Time spent on recce, seldom wasted, as they say. We then went down and had a chat with the Serbian front line, as you do, and had a quick coffee, Slivovic, and then a quick chat, and then went back. And then the next day, we set the meeting up. So there was 4 of us, set the meeting up, and the light infantry, same unit that we with the warrior vehicles, they'd put a warrior vehicle right in the middle of where the meeting was. So we literally, once we'd set the meeting up, me and Billy sort of banged on the side of the warrior vehicle. Right, lads, we're just going to go and have a quick chat with the Serbs, as you do. But walking down, now bear in mind that, I'd just spent 2 years over in Northern Ireland, so my situational awareness should have been a bit better than it was. Because as we were walking down there, it just didn't quite look the same, if that makes sense. And it wasn't until we actually got down and right next to the Serbs that we realised that because they'd brought the general up, people that we spoke to the day before weren't the same people. It was, more of their sort of heavy duty military, if that makes sense. So unfortunately for me and Billy, we got captured.
Wow.
And when you've only got a pistol, you ain't going to win a firefight when you've got 8 people stood in front of you with AK-47s. So it was a no-brainer. Oh, okay, lads, listen, calm down. So they actually took us into a hut or a little bungalow type thing, like a farmer's thing. Took us in there really for a tactical chat. Now we knew, we've been on courses and we also do this for Northern Ireland. If you're captured, you give a bit of a cover story just to. So my cover story was, I've only been there 2 weeks and I'm just a driver. Unbeknown to me that well, Billy's actually the driver, but I managed to get in there first and managed to say it. So they did a bit of tactical questioning, took our weapons, took the magazines off us, took our maps that were clear, notebooks, sterile, and then ID cards. Took all that off us. They then decided that we needed to go further back. So they put us in a vehicle and drove us 45 minutes from where we were all the way back to a sort of town or a city called Priador. And it was in a camp where, quite notorious, but it's where they Muslims used to get ill-treated. And they're on TV all the time, emancipated, starved Muslims. So this is the camp that they took us to. Took us into quite a large building, threw us on the floor. Now, on the drive down there, me and Billy were on the back seat, and we were sort of whispering, and it was great for us because we could see all the tank movement, so fantastic. No one has been this far, beyond the lines, so it was great. We were getting all them, but we were whispering away, and the guy who was driving was actually a major. Spoke very good English. We didn't know that at the time, but he spoke very good English, so we could understand what we were talking about. And he shouted something to the passenger, who literally span round in his big beard, span round, and he cocked his weapon. Now, call me old-fashioned, but you should already have your weapon cocked. Now, me and Billy at the same time. Don't know if it was maybe nerves, but we started laughing, sort of, giggling, thinking, because we both thought exactly the same. What the hell are you doing on the front line without a weapon, without a sort of round up the spout, if that makes sense? Anyway, that didn't go down too well at all. So anyway, we managed to get to the camp, and I got dragged in really first for interrogation. And I just stuck with listen, only been here 2 weeks, just a driver. I don't know fuck all, I don't know a thing. And they persisted for about an hour trying to, and I just stuck with that, that's what I'm going to get. So they threw me out in disgust, threw me into the corridor, useless shite, get him over there. And then Billy got dragged in. Now, Billy had been on a Serbo-Croat course, and had learnt a bit of the language and tried to speak Serbo-Croat. So some of the answers were coming out of Serbo-Croat. Now they just put 2 and 2 together and thought Billy must be the clever one, and the thicky driver out there is a waste of space. So they totally ignored me, And now, while you're in the corridor, obviously the guy that we laughed at, it was his revenge time, because him and about 5 other people were doing a lot of intimidation stuff, kicking you in the ankle and tickling your ribs with a bayonet or poking an AK, but nothing really that you weren't expecting. Fuck me, you've just been captured. You expect to be ill-treated, if that makes sense. And so for us, it wasn't a drama. You expect that anyway. So crack on, whatever tickles your fancy, you can do to us. So Billy got dragged in for interrogation, came out, and literally we were about 5 feet apart. Door got chucked open, me expecting to be dragged back in. Billy then got dragged back in again. 20 minutes out, dragged back in. And he got dragged in about 5 times, whereas, poor Mr. Thicky just got left alone really in the corridor, having to deal with these half-wits sort of trying to intimidate you. So in the meantime, the two lads that were at the meeting, they obviously realised that we'd been captured, and the way they got us out was they phoned on the sat phone, called the general.
Yeah.
Said, listen, they've got Billy and Mick. What do you want us to do? He said, listen, don't worry about it. Not a big drama. Just go into the meeting now and arrest the Serve General, and tell him that he's now going to be taken back to B Hatch. And to be honest, as soon as you mentioned B Hatch, bear in mind this is an enclave that they've been trying to get for the whole war and haven't. So the thought of going back there as a prisoner, he absolutely pooped his pants, to be quite frank. And they said, listen, and thankfully he had his own sat phone. So he called back, obviously, to Priador, got us released.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just before we got released, me and Billy got put together so we could actually whisper over. And Billy whispered over to me, he went, mate, what did you tell him, mate? I said, sorry, mate, but I just said I'm the driver. And Billy looked at me and went, yeah, but I'm the driver. But it was it's a typical military mentality. Snooze, you lose.
Yeah.
I was the first one in, so that was going to be my cover story. But unfortunately for Billy, because of that Serbo-Croat, they just put 2 and 2 together, and they put him through the ringer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, nothing untoward. They then said, right, you're going to get released. Took us back, same route and everything else. Great again, looking at all the movement, artillery pieces and stuff like that. Got to the where they actually took us in the first place. Handed our weapons back. They hadn't taken anything at all. Give us our weapons back. We just checked that they, had to round up the spout and everything else, and set us on the way. And we were walking back mostly back to through the checkpoint. Banged on the armoured vehicle. Oh, lads, we're back. Oh, fucking hell! Good to see you, but we just said, listen, that's part and part. Some of the stuff we do in Bosnia is actually quite ballsy, and to get captured is you expect that as a minimum. We had a guy shot dead, an SAS guy, not in our squadron,
right?
But he got shot between the eyes, driving a vehicle. So some of the stuff we do, you've got to expect at some stage the shit's going to hit the fan, So we just didn't make a drama out of it at all. It was just. And the only people that knew that we were captured were the other 2 lads in the patrol, obviously, the general down in Sarajevo, and maybe one other person, and the squadron commander. He obviously had to know. So we just didn't. The next day was normal work. Just get on. Yeah, what did you do yesterday? Yeah, you was captured by the Serb, but not a drama. And it wasn't really. It wasn't until Billy was on Who Dares Wins. And he was talking about escape, E&E, basically, escape and evasion. And he alluded to the fact that, he's actually been captured. Now, at the time, loads of people in B Squadron, our own squadron, who were in Bosnia with us at that time, rang him up and said, Billy, you're bullshitting. You've never been captured. And he went, actually, yeah, we have. We just didn't make a drama out of it, and really that just sums up really SAS mentality, I suppose. It's one of them things. Yeah, it's not nice getting captured. It's quite embarrassing, to be quite frank, to be taken by surprise, I suppose. And I put that down to me really. My situational awareness should have been a bit higher, having just come 2 years in Northern Ireland. And then 6 months doing the anti-terrorist team, but you just get lulled into a false sense of security. Having been down there the day before and had a good chat with them, so they really just caught us cold, I suppose. And there's not a lot you can really do about it. You're not going to win a firefight against 8 or 9 people with AK-47s, So, but all's well that ends well. Quite bizarrely, about a month later, it became NATO. So overnight, painted the wagons green and black from white. And then we got sent to Prijedor, where we've been interrogated. And the Serbs said, "Listen, we're going to give you a liaison officer. He's going to be working with you." So we yeah, no problem. So they gave us a grid reference so we met up. So two vehicles came together. Me and Billy jumps out the vehicle. Who was the yellow? The guy that was interrogating us, the major. And he looked at me and Billy, absolutely pooped his pants, jumped in his vehicle, drove, never saw him again. So they had to send another guy. So we did about another 3 months, I think, when it became NATO. We did another 3 months, predominantly sort of based up in Prijedor. Bizarre story. When it was still UN, we had a Bangladesh battalion to the north of where we were, to the north of Bihać. Now, Muslims, Bangladesh Muslims, in a Muslim area. So they were in the Bihać area. Now, 2 weeks before they were due to leave country, so they'd just finished their 6 month tour, on the verge of finishing, we get a report through late at night that the Bangladesh battalion was under attack. Can we go up there and provide assistance? So we had two Land Rovers, 4 blokes, what are we going to do, really? Anyway, 4 of us, 2 vehicles, drove up, walked factor 10 as fast as we could up to Bangladesh battalion, expecting the worst, if that makes sense. So we drove into the compound, expecting dead bodies and all this sort of thing, but it was really eerily quiet, and so we got there, and and the CO of the Bangladeshis came out and said, "Oh, who are you?" We said, "Listen, we just had a call that you're under attack." They went, "Yeah, we were, but it's all finished now." What do you mean it's all finished? How many casualties? Oh, none. Yeah, no. Hold on. What do you mean none? You've just been attacked. What happened was the Muslims Flag Corps, General Dadakovich, had threatened the Bangladeshis and said, "Listen, you're finishing in 2 weeks. We want all your weapons and vehicles." So basically went up there en masse and took all their vehicles and weapons, and not a shot fired, if that makes sense. Now, while we were there, a lorry had come in, and obviously it was a Muslim lorry that had obviously got the message that there's loot to be had. So it came in. So we just shot the engine out, the engine block. We just stopped the. Anyway, so the Bangladeshi was panicking because we'd shot up the vehicle. We didn't kill anyone. We just stopped the vehicle dead, and basically told the Muslims to bog off, there's nothing here for you, so off they went. But it was just a strange, surreal that a UN force could actually just hand over all their equipment, so ever since that day, I've had a bit of a disdain, really, for the United Nations. Wasn't impressed while I was there anyway, and that really just summed it all up, I suppose. Foreign countries sending troops to an area that really they have got no business in, to be honest. Bangladesh, Pakistanis, Indians, and that lot should not be in Europe. That's a European war. It should be UN. It should be European. British, German, whatever, French. Certainly not Bangladeshis, especially Muslim on Muslim, which was quite bizarre. And the other thing that I got asked was the Brits are very good at being very neutral. We didn't like anyone, if that makes sense. Muslims. Some of the Muslims were doing some bad stuff, to be honest. I know the Serbs were doing a lot of bad stuff because there was more of them. Croats were also doing bad stuff. So our mentality really was, if you was a bit like Northern Ireland, if you're a bad guy intent on harming someone, you're going to get the good news, regardless of your. But we found that the Germans had a bit of a thing with the Croats, French and the German and the Russians, very pro Serbs. Brits just didn't like any of them. You know, we try to be as neutral as you possibly could, like, you know, if that makes sense. And yeah, just didn't really go down that route of picking sides, because in warfare, as you're aware, you know, there's bad things happen on all sides. And I know the Serbs got hammered for it, you know, because of the amount of bear in mind that you know, they were the Yugoslav army basically, and they had most of the equipment and stuff like that. So yeah, interesting time. So came back. So at the end of that, really, I got a call to say, Mick, you're being posted to MI5 because I've got a surveillance background. They said, Mick, you're going to do a 2-year posting to London, working with MI5. Thought, oh, well, that's pretty cool. And actually, so a month before the tour was going to finish, I got sent back to Hereford, and I thought, right, I'll surprise Kim and my 3 boys, you know, and be a nice little surprise for them. So I literally walked in, and they were packing their bags, and I was like, hold on, where are you going? Oh, no, flipping hell, mate, you're here. Yeah, you can drive us to the airport tomorrow. And I'm like, what? What's happening? I've only, you know, just literally got back. Basically, they booked a holiday. They went to Andorra skiing, because we've got the kids into skiing and climbing really, really young, if that makes sense. So they were heading off to Andorra. So literally got there, spent the night. Next day, took them to Birmingham Airport, stuck them on the flight to Andorra. I then had a week before they were due to come back. In the meantime, 2 days later, I got a phone call from Bosnia to say, "Oh, Mick, your MI5 posting's been cancelled. Not cancelled, postponed, because you need DV vetting, which is actually quite a high vetting process, and it's not quite complete. So you need to come back to Bosnia tomorrow." And I was like, that flipping hell. So I got one of the lads said that he would go and pick my family up from the airport, and just my missus, you know, she said, flipping hell, mate, got off expecting to see your ugly mug sort of waving, and they just saw this lad called David Penman, who unfortunately passed away, but you know, he was there, like, you know, and she said she looked at David, and all she saw was him sort of saying, yeah, he's gone back, gone back to Bosnia. But that's typical regiment. You know, 1 minute you see your family, next minute you don't. Now, talking about families, so before we do the MI5 thing, it's actually quite important having a really strong family around you. Because we used to do stuff in Northern Ireland, come back, literally get helicoptered back, and then I would be picking the kids up, or taking the kids to school. So you didn't really have any time really to dwell on, you know, what you've just been doing the night before, if that makes sense. So post-traumatic stress disorder, 4 kids or 3 kids at the time, sorted that one out instantly, if that makes sense. And people say, "Oh, Mick, do you sleep well at night, having done all the stuff you've done?" Absolutely, I do, because at no stage did I have time to dwell on it. Because when you've got 3 young kids, and literally there was 17 months between the 3 boys, so we had 3 all under the age of 3, if that makes sense. And it was just having that sort of. And my wife she's actually quite a strong character. You know, she's from Scotland, so quite a hardy individual, and she was the glue really that kept it all together, I suppose. So for me, you know, it's you know, it's all well and good us going up and doing our thing all around the world, but it's also good to knowing that you've got quite a strong family connection back home that you can come back to and unwind, and chill out, and not really think about, you know, what's been going on. You know, when you've got 3 boys jumping all over your head, there's just no time really to worry about it, like, you know. So we did that, and then straight suddenly the MI5 thing came back. So it was a 2-year posting. Now, bear in mind that, you know, we've done surveillance over in Northern Ireland against hardcore terrorists. So now doing that now in London was a bit of an eye opener, because obviously it's nowhere near as bad, because you're in London. You know, following someone in London is totally different to someone in West Belfast or the Ardoyne or the Shankill, where everybody is a potential terrorist, if that makes sense. So your third party awareness in Northern Ireland is actually really high. Your third party awareness in London, not so much, you know, because you're in non-pervasive society environment, if that makes sense. And at the time for us, we had an IRA cell that was operating in London, and quite bizarre, MI5 don't carry weapons, so we weren't allowed to carry weapons. So at the end of the 2 years, I went back to Hereford and said, "Listen, we're working for the wrong people. We should be working with the Special Branch or the anti-terrorist team, because as soon as the MI5 thought that the IRA were carrying weapons, they backed off. So you've got two SAS guys working and, you know, saying, "You can get in there," like, you know, and then backing off, which for us was not normal, if that makes sense. You know, if you think that the terrorists have got a weapon, then that's your time to move forward, like, you know.
Right.
But we got told to back off, and it was just a bit of a bizarre feeling. So it all got handed over really to the police, who eventually actually burst into a hotel, and one of the IRA guys got shot dead during the arrest. And the reason being is the police decided to come in, make entry through two different doorways, threw gas in there, which caused a massive amount of confusion. So you've got two people now shouting orders, three IRA guys sat in there, not wondering, you know, what the hell was going on. And unfortunately, one of the policemen opened fire and shot dead one of the IRA guys, like, you know, shot him dead, if that makes sense. So that's how that one finished. So yeah, I was in London when Diana died. So she died in Paris. We were actually on a serial following Russians, Kensington Park Gardens, which is actually where Diana used to live. And it was just a bit bizarre because it came up. We actually got a radio call saying what was going on. And we had to call the job off because all of a sudden there was lots of people with flowers turning up. And, you know, you can't really be coverting a vehicle when you got loads of civvies turning up with flowers to stick all around the place. So we got called off. Did quite a few little tasty jobs, really, with MI5, which was quite enjoyable. But I wasn't as impressed with, you know, the stuff that we did in Northern Ireland compared to what we did in London. Totally different, if that makes sense. But, you know, good experience. You know, I got to know London really well. Funny story. They when you get there, they give you the, you know, a bit like the FBI warrant card. You know, FBI, MI5. So they give you this warrant card. Typical British mentality, to be honest. But they said, "Listen," and the guy that was trying to give it to us, he's been in MI5 for about 15 years, and he was just waffling on about how important this card was, and, you know, try not to show it, and, you know, blah blah blah, and he said, "Yeah, every time you show it, you then have to come back and write a report as to why you showed it and where you showed it and all that crap." And then, so bear in mind, you've got two military guys sort of looking at each other. Yeah, really going to do that shite. So 15 years, he showed his card once. In 2 years, I must have showed it about 50 times. Because every time I parked a vehicle, you know, the traffic warden coming up like, "Hey, fuck off, MI5, fuck off." Running, mate.
That's too fun.
That way you can park anywhere you wanted, like, you know.
Yeah.
MI5 keep an army car. And off you go, like, you know, fantastic. Did we write any reports? Not once.
Not one.
Somebody else was doing that. So really, yeah, back and then I was on my final 2 years really, because obviously you're on a 22-year contract. So basically, I've done 14 years with the SAS. At this time, I've done 12, so I'm now doing my final 2 years, and I became the head of the close quarter battle cell, CQB cell, for people going on operations, which is actually quite a high-powered job, really, because it's flipping dangerous. Some of the stuff you're aware, special forces, your range work is totally different to what it is with the Green Army. There's no safety, there's no safety lanes and all that. Like, it's just, you know, just get on with it, like, you know. So remember what I said at the very start, that the people 14-inch people, their learning curve for shooting is like that, because normal Green Army, you need to get them to an SAS level. So the learning curve was just phenomenal. And we were doing a serial where people were shooting on the same side of the street, so having to fire over the top of an individual to extract away from trouble, if that makes sense. So the person in the front was kneeling down and the person behind standing up. Two different doorways, but just firing over the top. And basically what you do is when you're at the front, obviously, firing away, and then basically you just have a quick look behind, make eye contact with the guy who's stood up. He sort of checks his weapon, and then that's your cue then to stand up and run behind him. Mm-hmm. He then kneels down. You know, it's pretty quick, pretty straightforward, really. You know what I mean? Anyway, so we had a female who was doing it because she was going to Northern Ireland, and we had another paratrooper, and the paratrooper was in the front, kneeling down, blah 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 blah, firing away. Girl behind him shooting away. Now, every time we do these drills, we make sure it's videoed, so you can just play it back, just in case you have a bit of a drama. It's good learning thing, like, you know. I'll tell you what, good job we were. So what happened was the paratrooper at the front forgot about checking behind him, stood up just as she fired. I tell you what, he had long blonde hair, and when we slowed it right down, you could see the bullet just crease the top of his head, really, really close. And we thought, fantastic. So we stopped it. They had a quick cup of tea, got them straight back into it to continue it, you know, because it's the best way of. She was in a bit of a shock, but it was the best way, really, of getting them back into it. You know what I mean? So that night we got all the course together. So people doing surveillance, people doing close target recce, people doing shooting, and we put the video on there, and everybody was shocked at how close this guy was to being killed. But the learning curve, really, for us, or the learning lesson that we got out of it, was we said, listen, guys, when you're doing surveillance and you fuck up, you're just going to get a bollocking. If you do CTR and you mess it up, again, you're going to get a bit of a bollocking. You mess up now on the ranges, you're going to get somebody killed. Mm-hmm. Now, when we're up at the ranges, we're actually quite laid back and chilled. Because you need to be, you know, we're not British Army, we're not normal British Army, you know, you're talking to adults here that are going on operations, so we've got quite a laid back attitude. Apart from as soon as you step on that range and you pull your shooter out, that's when you get serious. So nice and chilled out while you're having a coffee, watching. As soon as you step on the range, you're fucking switched on and you're good to go, like, you know. And we said, listen, guys, you mess this up, and you're going to get somebody killed. It's as simple as that, like, you know. And it was a great learning thing, really. Thankfully, no more lessons. The good thing about the training package that we did a lot of situation awareness type stuff. And they started with a really basic level. And what it's building up towards is actually being snatched by the IRA. So the very last one is you ask a guy to do a walk past in a you know, Catholic estate, he has to do the walk past, and then while he does a walk past, he gets jumped by about 6 or 7 people, in them days, I think we used to get a bit of a severe kicking, if that makes sense, because we used to borrow some of the attached ranks from the camp, the mechanics and all that. They used to come up and play the enemy, and they loved it, because it was a good chance of getting their own back on someone, so yes, some of these guys used to get a bit of a severe kicking, but it was all part and parcel of the training, it's just one of them things, and that's what it all. So it started off quite gentle, and then when we did the advanced part, it was all geared towards confrontation. How it and it wasn't a fail. It was just really to see how they were going to react on the day, because it was all these different ones. These guy walking up and pulling a gun out and saying, "Give me your car," for instance. And the way you go about it is you say, "Yeah, okay." Hand them the key. As soon as they get in the car, you just shoot them dead. Because if you don't, they've just driven off with a load of weapons in your car, if that makes sense. And you're probably aware, in Northern Ireland, a couple of years before, we had the 2 signals people that got jumped by the IRA at a funeral.
Yeah.
Now that changed the way we did our training, because the IRA actually thought they had 2 SAS guys, but they weren't. They were signalers, basically, in the wrong place at the wrong time. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong for these 2 young lads, sad to say. But it changed our mentality, really, on how we were going to deal with it. And the way we deal with it, the way we're taught to deal with it, was if you get a crowd of people around you, you just put that imaginary line in the sand right in front of you, and as soon as you feel that you've now hit the point where you need to do something, you just shoot dead the person that is the most aggressive individual. So you double tap him, put him down, and hoping that has a reaction with everyone else. And if not, you just continue firing, basically, because you know full well that if these people get hold of you, you're going to end up exactly the same as them 2 lads, So it's quite a tough mentality doing undercover work in Northern Ireland at that time, because you certainly didn't want to be taken by the IRA, and that really just enforced your mentality of not taking prisoners. Really, you were not going to be taken prisoner by the IRA, no matter what. So it was quite good. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. So the CQB cell for us was brilliant, because at the end of it, at the end of the 6 month, you've got guys now that were as good as pistol wise than SAS troops, in fact, because they had to be, because all their work is with pistol. No fancy holsters. We've had people turn up on the ranges with shoulder holsters, like that. Get that crap off, because all you do,
impractical.
It's just down your pants, and away you go. Because that's the best way of carrying it. Some people used to have a little pancake sort of on the back if they preferred it that way, but no ridiculous underarm stuff. The hell's all that crap about, especially in the summer. When all you can wear, because you got to fit in with what they. And if it's red hot weather, you've got a baggy t-shirt, pair of jeans on, or shorts, and the best place to put a pistol is down the front of your pants, and you just stash your spare magazines in your back pockets or whatever, and away you go, It's pretty straightforward, but interesting. We had there's the army have an organisation called the Couriers, and they're basically postmen that covertly in Northern Ireland, but they go from camp to camp, base to base in civilian cars, delivering important documents and stuff like that. So there's a guy who runs there. They have nothing to do with us whatsoever. That they do their little course that they do. But a good friend of ours used to run their training, and he said to us, "Mick, can you And there's two of us, me and a guy called Kev, who unfortunately has also passed away. But this guy said, Mick, Kev, can you take my couriers for a day, and just to do some different shooting with them? So yeah, no problem at all, like, you know. So you know, typical military humour. We because they're, you know, they don't like to be called postmen, but they're couriers. So what we did was we got these two big mail sacks. I just filled them full of boxes, put them in the back of the car so they couldn't see them, and then we started taking them through the different drills that you do on the ranges. And as far as we went with them, it was just a 2-man drill, a 2-man extraction drill, if that makes sense. But we made them carry the mail bags, and it was just a fantastic way of bringing them back down to earth, because they looked at us with these mail bags and we said, listen, guys, never forget that you're fucking postmen. You know, so don't go above your station thinking that you're undercover, because you're not. You are postmen. And I know it sounds as if you're belittling them a wee bit, but it was just a way, really, in our sort of warped sense of humour, of making sure that they didn't forget that, you know, they're there to do a job, and that was as a courier, if that makes sense. Some of our officers, when the officers come through the 14 Inc course, officially you're not supposed to know who each other is, so you keep your rank very quiet, and you keep your whatever military unit you come from, you keep that quiet. You're not allowed to divulge where you come from. Well, being SAS DS, we used to go in. We used to go into the clerk and say, right, tell me who all the officers are. So we knew who the officers were, and so if we needed TNs or any sort of shitty job came up, we would say, right, John, Bob, go and pick the TNs up, you know, and then sort of looking at each other thinking, okay, we're officers. we're picking up. So all the crappy, shitty jobs got sort of pushed towards the officers. And it was a good way of sort of bringing them back, because some of these officers come from senior regiments, like they could be guardsmen. So back in their unit, they've got Batman. So all of a sudden, when they're in Northern Ireland, you're working in a close-knit environment, and that there is no time for thinking like an officer. You know, you're just one of the blokes. So for us, it was a good way of bringing them back down to earth, if that makes sense, by giving them all the crappy jobs. So have you heard of simunition?
Yes. Yeah.
So on one of the drills, simunition's quite painful. So especially the 9mm stuff.
Oh,
so
yeah, I've had it on the knuckles before.
Well, this was the days when you used to wear safety glasses,
right,
and that was it, nothing else. Safety glasses. So what it was the IRA would stop a car, and bear in mind that we obviously didn't have any glass in there. So you'd stop a car, and what you do, if it's the IRA stop you, what you do is you stop about 10 feet away from him, and really force the IRA guy to come to you rather than you driving up, if that makes sense. But obviously, when you're stopped, and we have a Kurtz MP5K with a 30-round magazine on it, good to go on automatic, in the side bit of your in your car. So when he gets close enough, he gets the full magazine all over him. So guess who the IRA people were every time?
Yeah.
Was all the officers. Yeah. And you know how painful that
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And when you've only got I'll say what, mate, the welts on there.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's great.
If that makes sense. But I actually quite like the simunition, because it all of a sudden it forced people really to take up proper proper cover, if that makes, because with blanks, bang bang blah blah, you get swatted. You get swatted in the face with a simunition. You're going to make sure that you get in a good decent decent position, like, if that makes sense. So it was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but unfortunately, 20 years. They asked me if I wanted to do a continuation, but 22 years for me, I was now 40 years of age. And for me, I'd had a really good time. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Commando, 2 SAS. It was time to leave, if that makes sense. And I initially applied to join the UN because I thought, Bosnia, the UN were sort of pish poor. Now, at the time, Chechnya was just kicking off because it was in 2000. Chechnya was kicking off, and I thought, I'll apply for head of security for Chechnya. UN wasn't in Chechnya, but I just thought, good way. So anyway, 6 months later, I got a phone call from New York. Said, "Oh, we've got a contract. Have you got a fax?" I said, "No, I haven't, but I'll get one by this afternoon." So I went down, brought a fax, and they sent this. And it was about 30 pages of crap contracts from the UN. And you typical military, you're just looking for the main, how much you getting paid and where am I going. So at the time, I was sergeant major in the SAS, and then all of a sudden, they wanted me to open a barrier in East Timor, working as a security guard. And I just rang up New York and said, "Listen, have you got my CV in front of you?" And they went, "No." I went, "No, I didn't think you had. All you're doing is you're just putting a name to a security." And I said, "Listen, I'm not interested, So I turned it down and managed to get into gas and oil initially. Bit of a bizarre job. I got asked if I could look after a guy called the Aga Khan.
I know the name, yeah.
Yeah. And he was visiting Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and Kyrgyzstan. And this was in 2000. Now, the Aga Khan is the leader of the Ismail religious sect. And what his job really was, he was visiting all the presidents of Kazakh, Tajik, Kyrgyzstan to hand over $250,000 in cash as a sort of gift to these countries building a faculty of the Central Asian University, if that makes sense. So when we were in, so I did it one-to-one. I had a 5-man team. So I just did one-to-one with him, fairly low profile, but with him all the time. And then the rest of the guys were doing the advanced sort of stuff, advanced party and hotel, or all the crappy jobs, if that makes sense. Anyway, so we were in, where was it, Tajikistan, and I got a call from the Aga Khan's secretary. So, Mick, we're doing quite a secretive meeting. Can you, just make sure that it's low profile and blah blah blah, everything else. Anyway, so it was in a dasher in Tajikistan, and bear in mind that you had the Russians on the border still at that stage. They were still sort of securing the Afghan border, and unbeknown to me, so this individual that we met, very impressive individual. He was Northern Alliance leader, Masood. Ahmed Masood. Very impressive individual. The way he dressed, the way he spoke, and everything else. So he was. The meeting went on all night, basically, and basically the Aga Khan gave him a lot of money to take back to his people because they're all part of the Ismail sect, if that makes sense. And so I thought nothing of it. The name didn't ring a bell, but, because this was 2000, so why would it, And it wasn't really until 2004 I was in Afghanistan, and I got picked up by a local driver at Kabul airport, and he had a picture of this individual, Masood, and I went, "I've met him." The driver looked at me and went, "What?" I said, "Yeah, I met him." Blah blah blah. First roundabout you get to outside of Kabul, Masood roundabout, blah blah blah, and then it sort of just clicked on. And then actually discovered that he was actually murdered, assassinated by Al Qaeda 2 days before 9/11. Quite an impressive way they got him, actually, because they actually put the bomb in a camera, film camera. So it was two Al Qaeda operatives, camera with a bomb, the reporter, and they've waited about 3 months to try and get an interview with Masood, because Al Qaeda at the time knew that Masood was the only one really out of all the tribal leaders that could possibly bring them all together.
Right.
If that makes sense. And that's why they assassinated him. Yeah, and they when they got him in a cave, they blew the camera blew. Bizarrely, the reporter survived for about the first 10 seconds, because when all the bodyguards came in, obviously realised what had gone wrong, and they shot him dead, like, you know. But yeah, just a bizarre little story. 9/11, bizarrely, I was in Kazakhstan working for a consortium, Texaco, were out there. Not Texaco, Chevron, were out there. So 9/11, flew back to UK just after 9/11, flying back into Kazakhstan, and unbeknown to me, that the charter flight had overflew Russian airspace. So we had two MiGs escort and the first thing that went through my, looking out the window, looking at these two MiGs, was flipping hell, that Japanese aircraft that got blown out the sky over at Sakhalin Island. So what the hell's going? Anyway, so it forced us to land in Moscow. They confiscated the aircraft. They put us in isolation for about a day. They then put us on a charter flight to southern Russia, a place called Samara. We then jumped on buses and managed to get over into there. But yeah, just a sort of bit of a bizarre incident that occurred, and just goes to prove really that everybody worldwide was mega hyper after 9/11, like, you know.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough, really. I managed to, because I stayed in gas and oil. I managed to get myself thrown out of Equatorial Guinea. So I was in Equatorial Guinea for a year. And there's a guy called Simon Mann who did the attempted coup.
I remember that story. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was working for Marathon Oil at the time, US company, as the security manager. And so they had the attempted coup. Now, I became a bit of a thorn, really, to not only the corrupt police and everything else, but also the president has got a bit of a playboy son. Now, a week before, we'd had a presidential visit because he turned on, one of the gas pipelines or whatever, like, So it was all done proper. A couple of weeks later, the son turned up and decided that he was going to, bullishly go down to our facility and drink alcohol and stuff like that. So all the gates were open. So I sort of just happened to be driving past and, right, what's going on? Oh, yeah, the president's son. So I went down there to have it out with the president's son and really his security team. I just gave him a bollocking saying, listen, you can't just flip and turn. This is a gas and oil site. You can't just flip and turn up, do willy-nilly. So they took an instant disliking to me. So that was one, the first, tick in the box, I suppose. Next one, we had a JCB stolen. And it was stolen by a corrupt policeman. He was the one that ordered it. So I recovered it. I found, Equatorial Guinea is not that big a place. So I went downtown and found it. And they'd obviously painted it a different colour. So I went back, got two of the big Texan drivers, follow me down in a vehicle, and we dragged this flipping JCB all the way back. The bucket was sparks everywhere, bucket hitting the floor. Anyway, dragged it back. So the policeman turned up the next day and said, listen, we had it under surveillance. We want the JC back. And I went, no, we've recovered it. You don't need it. Week later, a more senior police officer turned up, and then 3 weeks later, the chief of police turned up. This was strike two, if that makes sense, because what they did was they fined, because we recovered our vehicle, they fined the company, Marathon Oil, $40,000, which I thought was corrupt.
Of course,
I said,
yeah.
I'll pay that. That's corrupt, like, you know. Anyway, so the company paid it. So that was that one, and then the final one was one of the American lads came over from Texas. He was a shooter. You know, his grip, his little bag, around had sort of gone underneath the bottom part of the bag. Easy done. You know, we've done it in the military. You know, the amount of times we've found bullets at the bottom of a bag, like, you know. Anyway, so managed to get through customs in the States, got to Equatorial Guinea. Anyway, got picked up. So they, you know what it's like, the Americans, not the Americans, but the UE, the Equatorial Guinea military got really hyper and excited. So I got asked to go down there and just, you know, can you help? Because the poor old American guy was absolutely pooping his pants because he was being threatened with being thrown in Black Beach, the notorious prison in Malabo. So I went down there ready to help him out. And I don't know if it was the right tactic, but I said, listen, do me a favor. So I asked one of the security guards to give me a round from an AK-47. So he reluctantly gave me it. The American, so I said, right, where's the bullet? You know, and slight, you know, difference in size. I said, you know, let's use a bit of common sense here. So again, they fined the company $40,000. For some reason, $40,000 was a number that they just used to pull out. So the company paid the fine, and I made a big song and dance about it and said, listen, what the hell? No wonder they're fining the company,
right?
Because you're paying for it
every single time. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just ringing that bell.
Anyway, a week later, customs and immigration turned up at the site to escort me to the airport. They'd probably got sick to death of this person that wasn't playing the game, like, you know. So I got escorted out, and it's quite funny because at the time they didn't have it wasn't digital. You know, it was quite old, and you know, and off you went. But they tried to grab my passport, and I didn't. I kept hold of it.
Good for you.
What they would do is that they were going to rip the visa out, and as soon as you rip a visa out, that's your passport null and void, like, you know. So I refused to hand my passport over. Anyway, so I got kicked out. The company, so this was in the September. Company paid up until the December anyway. It wasn't my fault I got kicked out, which was great. But then I joined a company called SBM Offshore. And that's where I was for 15 years, really. And at the time, so I was based in Nigeria, in Lagos, because that's where that was a problem child country. So I had my remit was worldwide: Brazil, Houston, China, Malaysia, Myanmar, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, Nigeria, Europe. So they were all the areas that we had, Malaysia and Singapore as well. So quite a big remit, really, especially Brazil, and Mexico was just starting up, and we had Guyana, which is quite a big thing now with oil, especially with ExxonMobil. I've now got quite a few things over there. So quite a big remit, really. But when I took over, the company had just had an attack on an FPSO, and they had 3 expats kidnapped, mostly. And unfortunately, the Nigerian military decided that they were going to rescue them. Shot one of them dead, as the Nigerians do. Another guy got shot in the arm, lost his arm, 7.62 straight through the arm. And the third one had the sense to dive on the floor as soon as he heard the gunshots, and survived it, mostly. So we just had this incident, and I took over about 4 months later, and there's no security in place whatsoever. So it was a bit of a blank canvas. So thankfully, SPM had really good directors of the company, and I sat down with them and said, "Listen," they were based in Monaco, sipping their pink champagne. So they were based in Monaco, and I said, "Listen, you've got a bit of a problem here, because you've got no security procedures in place. You know, nothing." So I said, "Listen, this is my idea," and it was really to establish a security culture within the company, doing security awareness, situational awareness, and just basically, get people a bit more switched on, and do a bit of homework. If you're going to go to Nigeria, you've got to do a bit of training before you go there, and it's really just to give them confidence about working, because civilians, you know what I mean, and you've got to hold them by the hand. And anyway, so we did that, and so I worked with SPM for 15 years. Never had a single security incident, working in high risk environments in all that time, purely because we managed to turn it around, if that makes sense. And I actually found that quite a big achievement, really. Getting civilians to the point where they were actually pretty switched on every time they either flew to Brazil, Guyana, Angola, Nigeria. So yeah, quite a big achievement. But literally 2 years ago, and by this time I was now based up in The Hague, in the Netherlands, and I'd been there for 6 years, something like that. And I just thought, 2 years ago now, I just wanted to do something totally different. So I wrote a book, Life on the Edge, but it's not your normal Bravo 20 type SAS book, all war stories and all that sort of pants. It's really about the individual, being a family man, and the, what the families go through, the turmoil of, you getting pushed on and how they go through it. And it's quite funny because I got divorced, really, from Kim. We've been married for 30 years, and we amicably, because we sort of drifted apart, because I was away all the time. So our marriage lasted the military side of it, but it was after, when you're away all the time. I was doing 14 weeks on and 3 off or whatever, or 12 weeks on and 2 off and all this sort of thing. So quite long periods away. So unfortunately, we just drifted apart. Now at the time we had a big 5-bedroom barn conversion out in the middle of the Herefordshire, and I, to be honest, I just gave it to my wife. And the reason being is I actually thought she deserved it. You know what I mean? Because she, she's always been there. She's the one. My kids are really well behaved, really well disciplined. That came from her. That didn't come from me. Dad was there when he's home, but Dad's away quite a lot, if that makes sense. And all the climbing and the skiing, that came from Dad, and rugby and all that lot. But how they got brought up was actually from her. So I just thought, who am I? And I'm really close with my kids, especially my daughter, who helps me out. And I just didn't want money issues to sort of ruin that relationship. So Kim, there's, you take it, it's yours. And the solicitor thought I was mad. Like that, what the hell, mate? Why are you giving it all away? But to be honest, mate, I just thought, yeah, she deserved it. So good on her. But it was, so it was just time, really. So I thought, right, I'll write a book. So Life on the Edge. But unfortunately, the co-writer, Nicole Johnson, she passed away about 3 months ago, unfortunately. And we all thought that she was gonna, she was gonna recover, but she just, down and down. Anyway, she passed away 3 months ago, and we'd literally finished the book. Really, it's obviously got to go to the MOD, Ministry of Defence, just to check that it's okay. But because she passed away, really, I didn't want the book going to anyone else, because you know what it's like when it goes through a publisher. They want to change it, and want to make it all a bit more dramatic, add a few more.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I didn't want the book to go that way, because bear in mind that Nicole, when I first contacted Nicole, she was going to tell me, the meeting was all about her saying, Mick, I'm not the person to write your book. Here's 6 authors that write SAS books. But as soon as I started talking about how I wanted the story to go, she was absolutely hook, line, and sinker with it. She absolutely loved it. It was her reaction that told me that she is the right person, because she used to work for the Labour Party as a communication, so very, very left wing. She's feminist. She's not the person that would normally write an SAS book, but just her enthusiasm for getting this story out there, because it's more of a heartfelt, rather than a war story. It's all about the individual and what we go from, family, and what we go through, really. Just something a bit different to the normal war stories that people write. Because I just thought really that, people need to know the SAS soldiers and Delta Force or Delta and SEAL teams. It's not all about the macho image all the time. It's all the other stuff that goes with it. Going through a divorce and after 30 years marriage and all this sort of stuff. So we did that, and that's so at the moment with that, it's in. There's a girl that knows Nicole. She's decided to take it on. So in September, she's going to September. Yeah, so in September she's going to finish off. So the first chapter is going to be a memorial chapter about Nicole, and then the last chapter is going to be about all what me and my daughter are doing. This, this, that, and the other, and then it'll be good to go. And what we're aiming for, over here in the UK, there's a big book festival called the Hay Festival, which is actually local to Hereford. And that's in March next year. And being a local author or co-author, we're hoping to get it through. That's if it goes through the MOD fairly quickly, which it should do, because there's no big secrets in there. If that makes sense. But on the back of that as well, because I've got 3 sons and my daughter, I just thought, you know what, I'm not a big fan of security companies. Because it's all about how much money we can make, typical security company mentality, I suppose. So I just wanted to do something totally different. So initially, me and my daughter teach kids, situation awareness, personal safety, situation awareness. And the reason I got my daughter involved is she does all the breakaway stuff. Because kiddies and females especially, they relate to her rather than me. So I do all the scary bit of, why you need to be a bit more switched on, and, in this day and age, take your headphones out, all the basic stuff. Because people tend not to listen to their parents. And sometimes it just needs someone else to go in there. So we actually taught up at the SAS camp, SAS kids and their wives, because again, wives don't listen to their husbands. But if you bring someone in, they'll listen, if that makes sense. So we've done quite a few, private girls' schools, complete schools, whatever, girl guides, all this type of stuff. So we're going to be continuing that. We're actually going to, on the 2nd of November, we're teaching all the girl guides of Leicestershire, so a big county of girl guides. And there's a guy who wants us to do Worcestershire girl guides, purely because it's young girls that are quite vulnerable, really. And in this day and age, people need to be a bit more self-reliant, a bit more switched on. So that's how it all started out. And then all of a sudden, I just thought, hold on. Now, I was living in rural Herefordshire, right next to a farm. I actually live on the farm. I'm actually on the posh part of the farm. So I've got the big mansion behind me. I'm in their cottage. And then you've got the working part of the farm across the road, so we're in the nice part, which suits me. And I've got 2 French bulldogs, and we love it. But we used to break into farms in Northern Ireland covertly, looking for terrorist weapons and bomb making equipment and stuff like that. And we actually got really good at breaking in. And even against dogs, if there's dogs running wild on the farm, we just used to give them, a bit of meat with tranquilizers in it, a bit of powder, and knock the dogs out. You didn't kill them, you just subdued them with a bit of meat just to get past it, So
Right.
so nothing was drama. If an alarm went off, you'd come back the next day. Right, we now know where that, and it could take you about a week before you manage to, break, because very easy to smash your way into somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
but when you're trying to break into somewhere covertly, where you're trying not to tell them that you know where the weapons are, you actually get pretty good at doing that, And I just thought, flipping hell, we can help the farmers here. By we call it the old poacher term gamekeeper mentality. So we went down to Wiltshire, which is the second biggest county in England, and they had a rural crime forum, and for some bizarre reason they invited us down there to give a presentation. Now it was typical police and police, so quite boring, statistics and all this sort of crap going on. So when we did our presentation, and what happened was they had a massive screen up, big stage, and a big dais, and everybody was hiding behind the dais. You just about see the headlight, So I gave the next presentation, and I only had 20 minutes, so I had to be quite punchy. So I had 20 minutes, and I said, listen. And it was straight after lunch. So I managed to get there quickly, and I managed to get one of these mics that you could clip on there so that I could walk around and,
Mm-hmm.
much better, shouting at people. So yeah, did that and basically I started up saying, listen, what I'm now going to tell you is really what you need to know, not what you want to know. And it's all about really the disconnect between the farmers themselves and the rural crime units, the police. And unfortunately, there's no link there at all.
Right.
So when you think the Wiltshire, second biggest county they've got 8 rural crime people to cover the whole county. Ridiculous. But so they're very much underfunded, very much undermanned, if that makes sense. So our theory, the way we're sort of looking at it, is a normal security company will go to a farm and say, right, I can help you. It's going to cost you £2,000 to do a security assessment or more, depending on the security company. So they'll do a security assessment. That's going to cost you money. And now they're going to give you a list of recommendations of how to improve now that's going to cost you quite a lot of money, if that makes sense. So the farmer, all of a sudden, he gets this bit of paper with the bill that's, to improve his security is going to cost him about £40,000. Call me old fashioned, but a lot of the farmers don't have £40,000 to spend on security. So our method, the way we're looking at doing it, is farmers don't pay a penny. We should be working for the insurance companies or the National Farming Union.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me where the vulnerable farms are, we will go there, we will put an arm around them, and we will show them and improve their security by using cost-effective methods. Only in the last resort will, if you need, to buy CCTV, okay, buy it. But CCTV is only as good as the people operating it. Otherwise, because it's like security companies saying, spend £40,000 on fancy CCTV monitoring devices. Then the farmer leave the gate open. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it's totally wasted. So for us, it's all about the farmer as opposed to the police, and as opposed to technology. The key to rural crime is always the farmer themselves, and the workers and the families. Get them all involved. And you can go on to any farm here in the UK, any farm, and there'll be keys left in the ignition of a vehicle, all-terrain vehicle, the quads, because that's their mentality. You know, it's easier just to leave the keys in. Now, I went to a big forum for rural stuff, agricultural thing, and we've got an organisation called the NFU, the National Farming Union. They're the sort of the main body really of the farming industry. Now, I walked up to they had a big booth, and I walked up there. Before I could say a word, the guy walked over and said, "Oh, do you want a high visibility vest that's got National Farming Union on the back?" And I went, "Oh yeah, thank you very much appreciated." Now, he didn't know who I was. Now I can go onto any farm now with that high visibility vest on, wave at people, and just go and nick a vehicle. You know, as we would do in Northern Ireland. You know, if you've got big kahunas, you can get away with anything. Believe you me. You know, reason for being there. You know, part of the NFU. You know, little clipboard. Check. Oh, nice Ranger over here with the keys in it, and off you go. Like, you know, so it's trying to change the security culture really of the farmers, because they're the key to it all. You know, it's not CCTV. It's not this, that, and the other. So we're trying to do something different. But unfortunately, we've got the NFU over here that pump a lot of money into the rural crime units, but only bits of that actually filters down to the smaller rural crime units. So it's not really improving what their capability at all, but they're tied in, and they don't like to be told that what they're presently doing is total pants, because our rural crime every year on year is up and up and up all the time, because over here we've got a lot of travellers,
right? Dumping them skips and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, you know, farms they're just deemed as easy targets for criminals, because they know that there's keys left in the ignition. But unfortunately, so what happens is I got sent down to Devon to help a farm out. And the reason I got asked to go down there was they'd just had a robbery. They'd lost £40,000 worth of equipment from the farm. They called the police. Police instantly issued a crime number so that they could claim on the insurance. As soon as they issue that crime number, you know that the police are not going to investigate. That's it. That's their job done. So nothing. So I got a call, and Mick, can you come down to Devon, Dartmoor, and how much is it going to cost? I went, listen, tell the farmer to pay for my fuel. So it was £150 to drive there and back, and tell him that I want a bacon sandwich and a cup of tea when I get there. Yeah. We spent 5 hours on the farm, and it was a family farm. So three young lads, the mom, the dad, sat them down, went through. I said, listen, you've got 5 cars parked out there. All 5 have got keys in ignition. You need to change that nonsense. I said, as I drove past your farm, I looked in there. You've got an all-terrain vehicle and 2 quads, all got the keys in. You need to take them out. You've got working dogs. Now, these working dogs that rustle the cows and the sheep, they're probably worth about £10,000 because of the training that's gone into them. Mm-hmm. Probably worth about 10 grand. So they've got 7 of these dogs running round at night time. You know, some people just grabbing the dogs and running away. Now, you take a working dog off a farm, I tell you what, that absolutely destroys the farmer, because he relies on the dogs to do all the work, if that makes sense. So we pointed that out to them. We then sort of walked around the farm. They had 1 CCTV camera and 1 light. Wasn't really effective. So we said, listen, let's move the camera, because where they had the camera, you can actually grab it from, you know, so if I can grab it, so can the criminals. So let's get it higher up so that it gives you a better view. Mm-hmm. Let's move the light. You know, really, really basic stuff, like, And we also said, listen, if you've got places that you don't want vehicles to go in, just get yourself a nice block, 6 foot, 6 foot length of wood, bang 6-inch nails through there, stick a bit of dirt over it, camouflage it up. No vehicles, or vehicles will go in there, but they're not going to be coming back out again. And it's just a cheap way, really, of securing, parts of your thing. So it was a bit of lateral thinking, a bit of common sense, a bit of lateral thinking. Let's help the farm out. And at the end of it, they said, flipping hell, Mick, in that 5 hours, you probably taught us more than 25 years working with the NFU. Because all the NFU do is just put guidelines.
They just want to collect those funds too, right? The unions, they get paid, don't they? The way it works over there. So you pay your funds, and it's supposed to trickle down. But
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, security guidelines to a non-security person. Yeah, straight over the head. You know what I mean?
They're taken advantage of too by security, because they're collecting a fund to hard target a house or hard target a farm, but their goal is not to help. They want to perpetuate it, in a sense, indirectly. If they can perpetuate the ignorant culture, then they've got a job.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we always say, there's 2 people, or maybe 3, that benefit from rural crime: criminals, insurance companies.
Oh yeah,
and the NFU. Thing is, the NFU pay a lot of money. Sorry, they get a lot of money for membership of being part of so the farmer expects a bit more than what they're actually getting now, if that makes sense. But unfortunately, here in the UK, the NFU they're the main element of the farming industry. They could do a lot more. Insurance companies, the brokers. So if a farm gets broken into, the insurance company, don't worry about it. We'll replace your tractor. But they don't improve the security, and then 6 months later, the brand new tractor gets stolen, because that cycle criminality doesn't change.
No,
so they report it, they get it replaced, and then it gets stolen again. So, and the insurance company, and all they do is they just their dividends go up. So the poor old farmer, not only has he been robbed of his tractor, he's been robbed by the insurance company, because they're now making him pay much more.
And those rates go up. Yep. Those rates go way up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And thing is, the farmers, they work their flipping butts off, and I say it here, working day and night, ploughing the fields and everything else. So these boys work really hard. For criminals just to walk all over them. Yeah. So they need a bit more help. So what me and Keeney, my daughter, are trying to do is, one, change the culture, and do a bit of training with them, but not put the cost burden on the farmer itself. Insurance companies, you should be paying me to help the farmers, if that makes sense. Because the insurance company, they know where the farms are that are at risk, or every farm that gets broken into where the police don't respond needs somebody like us to go around there and help them to improve the security, so that they're not robbed again, if that makes sense. So what we're trying to do is just something slightly different, and just change that model. But like I say, you every time a farmer asked us for assistance, Mick, first question, how much is it going to cost me? And if we sort of say, it's going to cost you 20 grand, instantly they're not going to pay that. But if we say, listen, we'll come down there, 150 quid for the fuel, make me a bacon sandwich, they're more likely to improve their security. If that makes any sense.
Well, that's, you're an ethical person. I mean, and
Yeah.
So, listen, I've got some questions for you, and you did a bang up job, because some people, you get them on and it's so difficult to get answers out of them. You ask a question, yes, no, and that's it. But you've been so entertaining, but I have a lot of questions for you. So first off is, you're very aware of the embassy attack in 1980 under Thatcher. And what was your thought? I mean, as a young man, was that an impetus for you? Was that something that motivated you to go in?
I was on the commander course when it
Yeah.
happened,
Oh, wow.
and to be honest, I was looking at it and I thought, who's the SAS?
Yeah.
I actually thought they were. I thought they were a postal organisation, special air service. Never, and then that came
Yeah.
on.
No one really knew. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And yeah, so that was quite inspiring to see that. And then straight after that is actually, doing all your homework. Who is this organisation? And then literally 2 years later, we had the Falklands. But I'd say what was funny. I went to Kenya and we did a jungle trip, and there was two SAS guys that were doing the instruction, and they were so long hair, scruffy, beards, first name terms, no rank. Yeah, call me Bob, call me Bill. Just treated you like an adult, and them two people, they're the ones that really inspired me to, that's how you should be treated, if that makes sense. Because everybody looks at, who dares wins with Billy and that lot, where you've got everybody screaming in your head, shouting, blah, blah. None of that happens on SAS selection. No one
I heard that was
shouts.
more for TV, and that's not the reality.
Yeah.
I think Ant was saying that's more for
Yeah.
TV, right? And it's just that's not true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Speaking to you like an adult.
Yeah, and quite bizarrely, Billy was actually an instructor on reel, as an instructor. So we had a chat with him, and he said exactly the same. He said, "Mick, it's all for TV."
Yeah.
Because if you was to do reel selection, people would go, "Oh, Bill, this is boring." No, just send you off on the hills and
Yeah.
right, lads,
Yeah. So as far as mentality, I mean, do you have are you a person of some kind of faith? I mean, what drove you? I mean, for some people, it's their family, right? Which you had, and you talk about that in the book, and I'd like to get a copy of the book. But for you, what kept it all together for you? Some people journal, they have some type of thing that keeps them grounded. For you, what was that all these years, all these decades?
Family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's funny. I never got married till I was 27.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, my wife was the first person. Bear in mind, I was never ever. I was quite rough and ready. I had no front teeth. Quite a bit of a hooligan. In fact, in my commando days, you know what I mean. No interest really in women. They just get in the way.
Yeah.
So and she was the very first person that said yes to a dance. So I married her.
Smart guy.
Normally if I go up to a woman and say, "Oh, it's fancy a dance," I look at you and go, "No, thank you."
Yeah.
Said, yeah. So yeah, for me, it's all about family. That's the thing that keeps you grounded and everything else. So yeah, definitely.
Now, did you get any mentors during any of this time? Because this is a big deal. So, for example, you went to the junior pairs, right? So, and what did they teach you? Did they teach you like rigging and all that? I mean, did you do jumps in that, or was that just preparatory to do jumps when you got to?
Yeah. Junior para. No, I actually joined the gymnastic platoon in the junior. So so it was a 9-month,
Wow.
6-month,
Yeah,
a 6-month. Basically, you toured the country. Doing gymnastics, and it was really just a recruiting.
what a great skill! That's a great skill to have.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, you had to wear leotards, and you looked a right twat. To be honest, your wife's on it.
But did you have mentors? I mean, in there, or did anyone impact you? Is anyone, or let me say, you've got a lot of guys in your units, in the SAS. Was anyone a mentor to you? Anyone that you gravitated to that really impressed you?
Yeah, and they're actually DS. You DS on selection.
Okay.
Some of them really stand out. We had a guy called Chris Perkins, who was a fantastic runner. Very very quiet instructor, but he just stood out for me, and I thought, yeah, that's how I want to do. The two lads in the jungle, how they behaved, and that chilled out, laid back. For me, that's how I wanted to be. And it's funny, when I was an instructor on the All Arms Commando course, I kept that same mentality of being fairly chilled out, but in a commando environment where normally you would expect. tell you what was funny is there's a guy got in touch with me about 6 months ago. He and at the time I took him through the All Arms Commando course. He was a good lad, but he had an off day, and it was at the final exercise. You do a 10-mile tab off a moor, actually off Dartmoor. And he was going through a bit of a bad patch, to be honest. He was struggling. So I, as you do, I grabbed his Bergen, got one of the other lads to carry his weapon. And for 9 miles, we sort of dragged him along, basically, because it was a team effort. But then just before we got to the end, I stopped everyone, quick drink of water, get your Bergen back on, get your shit together, and then let's all sort of finish together, if that makes sense. Anyway, past it, he went down to Lympstone, managed to earn his Greenberry, blah, blah, blah. But if my mentality was, if we was to have, got rid of him, it would have been a waste of a good soldier. Anyway, unbeknown to me, so 2 years later, he left his organisation and became an officer in the Royal Marines. And he got in touch with me 2 years ago, and he went,
Nice.
Mick, or a year ago, and said, Mick, he said that you probably don't remember me. He said, but what you did that day absolutely inspired him to become an officer.
Nice.
If that makes sense, and it just goes to prove that rather than just being a total dickhead and get rid of him, you actually help these people.
You saw his potential. You say that you see the value of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it'd been a really good lad.
Yeah.
He just had a bad day, and we've seen it on SAS selection. On selection, there's the thing called the fan dance, and the fan dance is one off. You run up the penny fan, run down the other side, turn around, run back over, and away you go. Now, you fail that, you're off. There's no second chance on that at all. And it's really geared towards making sure that you've done the preparation beforehand. That's what it's all about. Now, I've seen guys struggle and nearly fail, managed to get through that, and then gone on to do great things in the SAS, if that makes sense. So it just goes to prove that no matter how fit you are and how good you think you are, you're always going to have a bad day and an off day. And it's just recognizing it by hoping that somebody else recognizes that and sort of helps you along, if that makes sense. So it's really DS, picking out one of the instructors and how they go about it. And I was quite lucky when I first joined B Squadron. You had the remnants really of that embassy siege that were sort of on their last 6 months, if that makes sense. John McAleese, for instance, he was on his last 6 months with the. So he was always, and I'm not saying he was my mentor, but it was just nice to sit down and talk to him, and he was a family man as well. He's got a son who unfortunately got killed in Afghanistan.
I remember that in the news. That was huge. You could Daily Mail. That was big news.
Yeah. So he was a big family man as well, if that makes sense. And his kids used to go to the same school as where mine. So you'd always bump into him, even though he was now out, because he did a lot on TV and stuff like that. Yeah, so people like that. So there are people within the organisation that you rather than just picking one thing out of one individual, what you do is you try and pick the best bits out of other people. And make that your personality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I've heard Robin Horsfall. He's coming on Wednesday, but he talks about family. What's really important. But so coping. I mean, what did you do as far as coping? Did the book help you go through coping with a divorce? And you still have your family intact, which is fantastic. But that's hard. I mean, and I know I separated the service myself, and it's tough because you have to find a job, employment. How do you make money? How do you provide for family? And in some cases, as I've said before, your wife won't talk to you, your kids hate you. So you've got some semblance of a family, but it's still not easy. What was your coping mechanism? How'd you deal with dark times?
Yeah, well, it's funny because I've been away now just over 2 years,
Hmm.
and I still can't get a job in the security industry. And a lot of
Wow.
that is because people think you're overqualified, or a lot of it is that they're a bit concerned that you're going to sort of go in there and suss out, how crap they are, and a bit of jealousy. So, you know, yeah, we find it because even though me and my daughter are doing quite a few bits and bobs, it doesn't pay for the house.
You're right.
Which is why we're heading down tomorrow to do natural gas. This that and the other. I've been offered a job working with a nuclear organisation on a part-time basis. But yeah, it's trying to get a job, especially when you're 65 years of age now. Straight away, because this new criteria, age, sexuality,
That's very true.
ethnic, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Over here, especially, is far more important than actually your skill set.
We're seeing it all the time, and the police chiefs are hiring diversity, right? You're going to hire someone who's, and this is not a knockdown on anyone, a female of a certain race, etc. What can you do the job? Look at the Secret Service with the Trump assassination. You've
Absolutely.
got women who are 5'6". Why are they in there? 120 pounds. So are you going to drag a 200-pound man somewhere? No, you're not.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and the
Yeah.
one that was breastfeeding her child that went off, went off the duty, but those things happen. Let's talk about legacy for you, and you've done quite a bit. I mean, Falklands, you've done it quite a bit. So, what's your legacy? What do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for what we're doing now,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. Which is why I came back and set this company up, Hawks and Co. So you can't join the company unless your name's Hawks. So it's hoping that the three boys and my daughter continue it, which is why we're fighting at the moment to get contracts. And this is why I came back 2 years ago, because I just thought the easy solution for me was to continue being a security manager over in Holland. But it's something that you want to, and I think every parent, every father,
Hmm.
would like to, when it's time to sort of lay back and stick your legs in the air and sort of pass yourself away, is to actually pass on something to your children, if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
which is why we started the Hawks and Co. So for me, it's that legacy is what I can actually pass on to the kids, because I've got three really switched on young lads, and my daughter is of the same ilk, because the three boys are all in the military, if that makes sense. And then my daughter, she's of the same ilk as the boys as well, so yeah, it'd
Switched
be
on.
nice
Yeah.
to, yeah, you know what I mean. So we are a very military family. My father was in the army,
Hmm.
so yeah, really fun. And the other thing as well is I like to help the army community. So we did that training for the kids, SAS kids. Recently, I went all the way up to Aberdeen to work with the British Legion, and it was just ready to give a life story. And it ended up doing 3 hours, which was the British Legion thought it was great, because they left the bar open, and everybody was drinking quite a lot of alcohol, and just doing things, helping the Girl Guides out, and just being a decent human being, in a world really where that personal touch is seems to go out the window now. Everything seems to be about money. How much can I make,
Hmm.
rather than how can we help you? And which is what we did when we went down and helped the farm down in Dartmoor. So yeah, it's trying to, I'm too old in the tooth now, mate.
Yeah, I
To
think you've got that old school touch, and that's just to
Yeah,
treat people with respect, and to not exploit people, because there are people with lots of skills, and we've got a man in the States here. I'm not going to say his name, but it's all about making money, making your brand, and getting your name out there to sell as many books as you can, and that's great. Okay, you did X, Y, Z, but at the same time, that was back then, and right now, what's going on? And you're talking about it. It's the culture, changing the
yeah,
culture. The most important thing a person can do is change a culture, and that's tough. because the culture is reluctant a lot to change, and they don't understand how to change. And you could exploit that, but you're doing good. You're being an ethical person. You're going out there, regardless of where they're at politically or philosophically. I'm sure you're just out there trying to help this farmer. That's important.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And young kids as well, because they don't know any well. You got grooming gangs and that kind of thing. And I read an article about rapes and how to educate people on how to break off from contact.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. We had 5 rapes in Hereford 2 years ago, which is really unusual.
Yeah.
So we did an article in the local newspaper and said, listen, I'm just back from Holland. We teach this, so me and my daughter, and we offered it free of charge to all the schools in Herefordshire. Yeah. Nothing, 0. Because over in the UK here at the moment, we are very reactive in our mindset. Only until it actually happens will people do. Whereas you really need a proactive. We had the Manchester attack 7 years ago, and still even now, they haven't learned the lessons. They haven't put mechanisms in place. Whereas we've actually been since 2015 Paris attacks, we've been over to Houston. We do active shooter, or as the police call it, maraudering terrorist attack. So we've been keeping going on that because our theory is that everybody needs to understand what their options are if some lunatic walks into a building.
That was a strange one, wasn't it? The Bataclan. That they thought that was an inside job. What are your thoughts, real quick, on that one?
No, I don't think it was inside. I think they got caught cold.
Clueless, didn't really know how to do their job. Yeah,
and it just went in, and but unfortunately, you walk in anywhere with an AK-47, you're going to get a reaction straight away, And unfortunately, with Paris, because unfortunately we're friends. I used to live in Monaco, but right next door we had Nice. Where we had that terrorist incident in Nice, 7 people killed with a guy driving an articulated vehicle, which is just goes to prove that you don't need weapons to kill a lot of people. You just need a mindset, if that makes sense. Now, when we taught active shooter and what to do in the Monaco office, there was a lot of skepticism. Monaco, the worst thing that ever happens in Monaco is you drop your pink champagne on the floor and that's a major drama. Nothing ever happens. But all these people that work in Monaco live in Nice. And let's say 2 years later, we had the incident and people coming up saying, yeah, Mick, I'm glad we went through that training because, automatically they're starting to think.
Yeah.
And that's what we do rather than, because we like to go into organizations to teach everybody at their location, because an active shooter incident is not going to happen in a sterile classroom. It's actually going to be at their office. So let's do the training at the office. Let's identify safe locations. Let's sort out the lockdown drill and all this sort of thing at your thing. And it also saves the company a lot of money. So rather than them sending people away to do the training, sod it. We'll come to you and we'll run through it, But like I say, we're on very deaf ears over here, very reactive mindset. So it's been hard going, really, trying to do what we do. We did something recently where we taught a load of cadets. So there was Navy, Army, Air Force, firefighters, police, Girl Guides, all these young people, and out of that, 3 organisations came up and said, Mick, can you do more for us? So the Girl Guides have signed up. Loughborough University want us to do a load of training, and a private school, Bromsgrove, not that far from here, also want us to help out. So I think word will get round there. But what we do is what people need, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you guys are in strange times, though. I see what's going on in the UK. and you can't speak out. They're monitoring what you're saying on social media, and they're penalizing people now. I said that the chief is going to call people. And I'm not going to get to UK politics because I've got my own problems here in the States, but it's quite strange now. And it's so strange. Like, how do you navigate through the city center without getting into trouble? You know, today everyone going to break out their phone and record. It's like, nah, get out of the city, man. Get away. You don't need to be where the mobs are. You don't need to be anywhere near that. You know, you need to get your family and get out.
We always say, you know, the only fight you're guaranteed to win is the one that you avoid.
Yes, very true.
Yeah,
Very
you
true.
know what I mean? And just yeah, but unfortunately we're in that thing now. Everything's about social media.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, the cameras out there purely because people automatically are thinking money. How much can I earn?
Sure.
And,
How can I monetize
unfortunately,
this video? Yeah.
Yeah, and instead of actually helping the poor victim, they're recording it, and then they're trying to justify. Yeah, but I've got the evidence. Well, we know that the police are not going to do anything anyway, and all you're doing is you're posting it on social media,
Yeah,
to make yourself some money. So don't, you know, come out.
yeah. We see that. We say that in America with the cops. People are filming while these cops are
Yeah.
getting beaten to death, and nobody's stepping in. But let me ask you one last question here. Are you surprised at the person you become? I mean, did you ever have doubts at all? Did you? So I'll frame it to one question. Did you have doubts when you look back at your life? My gosh, 30 years, 40 years, you've done so much.
Yeah. Well,
are you surprised?
Yeah. Well, when I was, because I've got a hair lip, and so that you've got a disadvantage straight away. So if you've got a hair lip growing up, you know, people take the piss out of you, and that's understandable. The way I got around that was I was good at football, so I used to get into all the football teams, and that was my way of sort of, you know, stop bullying me, do that, and then obviously joining the military and everything else, and no, it's I think it's just your character, your strength of character, and how you go about your way, like, you know, which actually determines how you're going to come out, like, you know, and I see that now in my sons, how they're going about it, and if kids are brought up right, you know, if they're brought up with a strong family connection, and not allowed to roam and do what they do, which unfortunately is this, then kids are going to be well behaved, and everything else. You know, I feel really proud.
Good.
Having kids that are really well brought up, like, you know, which is why I've got a lot of respect. But even though me and my ex-wife are divorced, we're still really, really close. You know, and like Christmas, I'm around there for having a Christmas dinner. Top tip: if you've got kids and you're thinking about getting a divorce, make sure it's amicable, because it just takes all the pressure off the kids when they're deciding, right, who can we invite? Because if we invite both of them, they're going to be fighting. So, and it's going to ruin it. But if it's an amicable one, you know, we went to a family wedding about 18 months ago. Brilliant. You know what I mean? You know, and the kids love it. You know, mum and dad are not arguing anymore. You know, they're just good. So yeah, you know, I'm still very close to my ex, Kim and that lot. And because I admire her, you know, I think she's a fantastic human being.
Good.
Like I say, and with that, you know, because that helped me. That helped me get through a lot of the shit that we used to go through. You know, coming back and.
Yeah, you got to have that support mechanism somewhere in the back, because you're doing things and your mind cannot be fixated on home. You've got to be on the mission, on the operation. So that's tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And the other thing, I'm refusing to get my hair cut. Too many people with no hair. What the hell? You got some hair.
You're looking good, man. So let me ask you one more question. Is there any question I didn't ask? Anything you wanted to share? Anything you want to talk about before we sign off?
No, not really. It's no, I thoroughly enjoyed my military career. Unfortunately, here in the UK, military is not like it used to be. Kids joining up now, I would always say, you know, be very careful, because we've got a recruiting sort of system over here, and it's not military; it's a civilian. So when people join up, they're not speaking to a military person; they're speaking to a computer, and it's a very slow process. So our recruiting and retention is at an all-time low at the moment. So if I was to give advice to people on joining the military, although I'd hate to say it, it's always, think about joining the Royal Marines rather than joining the Army, because the Royal Marines have got a better recruiting and better retention than the British Army, unfortunately, and that's really sad to say. It's just the way it's happened, like, you know.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. We have a huge retention recruitment problem here in the States. People don't want to fight because they don't like, the culture right now. But I'm hoping there's going to be a shift, but we'll definitely see. So, well, it's been fantastic to have you on. I really have enjoyed it. And don't go anywhere. Let's chit chat before, after we sign off. Guys, I'm going to put the link down to where to get his book, to his website, to his Instagram. Please give Mick a follow. Engaging. And he's doing great work, man. He's not taking advantage of people. He's out there. So if you have anything you can share to help him grow, share his posts, share his, website with people. Mick, thanks for coming on, man.
My pleasure. Absolute my pleasure.
Yep. All right, guys. Good night, and we'll talk to you later. All right.